Alright, I think the goal for today is to avoid epsilon bracket. I get an amen.
What's in it? I don't know the brackets, to be honest.
It goes...
bracket is the
worst one.
lowest.
It depends on... There isn't always an epsilon bracket. It depends on how many teams are registered. Basically, it goes alpha, beta, I believe gamma is third, delta, and then epsilon bracket.
Yeah.
So, obviously the better... Alpha's the best one, so we want alpha.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been to Alpha. For sure. I think I made it to Gamma a couple times, and I placed like third.
Mm.
But those are like with teams that were like not. Those were not the guys playing Gamma. Yeah, I think I've been like the highest I've been with Beta. They wouldn't let me there.
I think as long as so if we can get into alpha or beta, that means that we're at least playing like for day 2. We're playing from a position that like there is theoretically a path to winning.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just don't lose a single game in the tournament. I'm just saying.
How does I guess
so true.
do the brackets work like on day 2? Once you lose like your 3 games, you go down a bracket, or you're just eliminated?
No, it's double elimination. So you're in. Let's say we get gamma bracket. Then if we lose 2 best of 3s, then we're out entirely.
I see.
Yeah, so we can
Males
go like.
hyping us the fuck up.
Is that day 2 gives us 4 games minimum. Today I think is round robin, right? Do we just go around?
Yes, it's technically it's Swiss bracket because we only have 6 best of 3s.
6 best of 3s?
Mhm. Swiss is weird. I don't really like Swiss, but with how many teams there are, we kind of have to do it. Bracket says 6. We play maximum, yeah, minimum of 6 games. Or, sorry, 6 sets.
Enormous paper.
Band for band. I'm gonna try to use the bathroom.
It's probably a good idea. We're gonna be shitting ourselves in a couple minutes.
Yo, real? So true.
I'm icing myself out right now. I gotta keep playing.
Well, yeah, you should be standing. I'm folding my laundry because 1, I need to, and 2, it's like sitting right there.
Great.
Battlefield fine. Okay.
Just waiting for a bracket message now.
Yep.
Yeah. Got my playlist going. It's gonna be a good day.
I'm glad I'm not captain. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to sit there, look at the screen, click and refresh to see what's happening. I don't have to go to the help me desk going, dude, we didn't get a game with the hubble ID. And you're like, nah, you gotta buy. And then your team just sits there and you're like, dude, I should entertain my team. I don't do any of that. I have to fold my laundry.
Dano, you should do stand-up comedy for entertainment.
So based. So based.
Stand-up comedy?
Yeah. Like, just... I don't know. Hit us with some jokes. Entertain us.
Okay.
Oh! Match is ready. Okay, so we're in Group C.
Okay.
Well, you talk to the other captain, you determine who's having, like, the lobby, and then I think you have to friend each other. That, or there's a pool. But
Yeah.
in my experience, it's friend.
Yeah, the directions say friend.
Okay.
Alright.
Also, tell us their name. You have to tell us their name.
It's Rainbow Inc. They're seed 13.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, they're an actual team? Fuck.
And we're seed 34, so this might be interesting.
No worries. We clap, it's fine.
True?
Okay.
True, actually?
We just like keep winning games until we find seed 1 and we go no. We cry, and then we win anyways. It's fine.
No, there's a Kirbs. It's over.
Uh-huh.
Literally an imposter.
It's like out aim them, it's fine. These ducks are so annoying. How do I fold them? I just really lay them on top of each other.
You fold your clothes?
Yeah, you don't want them being like
You
crinkly.
don't want to be. Yeah. Bro, I'm so fucking nervous right now. I'm like shaking.
I'm also a little bit shaky, but I think it'll go away after the
Drink
first game.
water. You guys have to relax a bit.
I'm relaxed, I'm just
I've never been
nervous.
in a tournament.
Bro, chill.
I got my orange shoes on with me.
Hard in the beginning of the game so I can make you like give you compliments throughout the rest of it. Like chill.
Multiplayer
Hey,
maps
guys.
and modes have been updated.
How do pools work again?
I have no idea, I've never used them.
I do.
You join a pool.
Okay. How do
You
I
put
do
in the
that?
exact letter combination that okay. In the lobby.
Uh-huh. Is it... Oh, never mind, I got it.
Be like plus fold.
I got it. Oh.
It should be under the I'm in a pool called Dino, and I can't tell if there's people who are also in the pool.
If you get invites, then yeah, other people are in your pool.
Oh. I get invites a lot.
Okay.
I just never leave my pool.
Which pool? Blank
Do
C.
I can just join from the list I know from.
You join your friend, also known
Yeah.
as Ava. Hi, Ava.
Hi.
You are friends now.
Bro, I'm gonna get a fucking. It's not easy being this green.
Real?
Real? Man's out here grinching. Do you guys know what High Pixel Grinch Simulator is?
I know Hypixel, I've never heard of Grinch Simulator.
Every year, for like I think the last 2 years, they put out a limited time game mode around Christmas called Grinch Simulator, and it's out till like January. And what you do is you play around like this village, and you steal presents.
That's kind of
And there's
silly.
like 8 Grinches, and you like all run around the map, pressing right click to click on the present.
Oh, I remember that game.
And the winner
Okay.
gets the most presents.
I swear, people are like cheating on that game because like they already knew where
No,
the
that's
presents were.
Okay,
No, you
guys.
can take it.
You guys should be able to join through me. The password is 6969.
Okay.
Gaming time. Gaming time.
You made sure to mute your stream for that, right? Don't want no viewers.
Don't want no
to
stream
join.
The-
snipers.
There's literally no fucking way.
It's a possibility. I mean, I'm also streaming,
It's on your
so...
friends list. That is a thing. That's funny.
Sometimes, like, I get it, like, it's just typed in chat. And I'm told to go check it.
Male, if you stream snipe, I'm gonna start crying on stream. It's gonna be really embarrassing.
I think it's gonna be really hilarious, personally.
Dude, IRL crying stream, I'm just saying.
Yo.
You get to choose what the stream content is today.
Why the fuck is there curbs and a curb?
I know, dude. It's gonna be awful.
It's weird.
Which one's ours?
I'm the one with the music
The
note.
star.
No? Okay.
How did you not know that?
I was like, I saw 3 of
They're
them,
incredibly
dude. I
similar.
see
I don't
3
blame
curves on my
them.
screen. I don't know what you want from me.
Are we doing Tower on Haggle? Looks like it.
Do you even know my name?
No? Who's this Ethan guy?
Who is this Ethan guy, bro?
Rod. Rod's a teammate, right?
Holy shit, is that Rod, the famous SSBU commentator?
Hey yo.
I love
I
Rod.
have no idea who these people are.
I've never heard of these guys either.
Max
Okay.
would like, alright, there's a guy called Max. He like would know every single person That was crazy. Cause like,
Alright, guys, lock
who the hell
in.
is this guy? And he's like, oh, he's this guy from this guy who streams on this channel. Like, what the fuck? Did you dox him?
Quick question. What's our opening?
Main.
Main.
Alright.
Ethan, hold right wall. You dive if you think you can get a split with it. Kirb, you
Alright.
stay in the middle.
I stay where?
In the middle.
Okay.
And then we'll tell you to tell us. It's on them to decide when the game starts.
Yep.
These socks are inverted.
Just like open, but these guys play a little more.
It's
like
All their
it's
positioning,
just like
when they
open.
make their like opening, if there's 3, if it's 2-2, it don't give a shit.
Mhm.
That's just normal. If they're 3 on one side, they're likely to shove it through there. Kirb, stay on the side.
Got it.
Like,
I'm
if
going
they're
right.
shoving right, you should be at the like catch them on the right.
I'm going right street.
Yep.
Alright. I guess I'm staying mid then.
Watch the Tana. 52 is the next problem.
3 got
Follow
stealth
jump.
jump.
Ninja. Yep, follow jump.
Gal's got Ninja Squid as well.
1 on 9.
You got it. You have it.
One striking tower.
I'm out. Damn it. I'm out.
Alright, I'm watching right street. Gal's in the right street.
I got one died pencil.
Okay,
Their pencils
Steven.
on 10.
there's someone striking
Yeah,
tower. Gal's on me. I'm dead.
Coming from right. I'm coming from
We
right.
lost right street. We're backing out.
I'm on 10.
Alright, I have special.
Okay.
Play for mid.
One,
They have shield up.
one sharking under.
Looking on staircase.
I'm out.
Alright, right side pillow. 2 right side pillows. Rushing our staircase.
Roller.
Going left.
One underneath it. Pick up
He's
the guy.
pushing up. Got him.
Ah, they got me.
Try strike still out. Try Zuka, sorry.
Got one.
52 on staircase, please.
Yep, I see him. I can't hit him. He's still sitting there.
One out. Right side, 52. 52 right pillow.
One is in our attic. One's in our attic.
I'm dead.
Ethan, watch out. You got 2 on you. I'm dead.
Wave.
Under their shield. Our attic, Mark. Shield, Mark. Mark is isolated. Need help on staircase.
Yep.
Going 10.
Sitting on top.
Got 1.
Down tower.
2.
Right side. Right side.
Gal's on
One
me.
behind one tower. One,
I'm dead.
one right
I'm dead
side
to Gal.
tower.
Pencil weak.
One right side tower.
Damn
3
it.
out to him.
I'm zip ready. The roller's gonna try to rush me down.
One.
I'm dead.
Roller.
They don't have tower.
You are
One
you are
tower
time.
again. Got 2.
Gal's still over there. Careful.
One climbing wall of tower from behind. Charger's mid.
Yep.
Look for special.
Watch for Gal.
That's 1.
Ooh,
That's
I
2.
died.
That's 3. He's dead. I special watching staircase. He's up on this.
Gal's still in attic. Gal's dead.
Thank you.
I dropped by accident.
Roller on my right. Roller weak. Right staircase. Roller staircase still.
Got
Stay
roller.
away.
Roller's dead.
Charger's behind.
I'm fighting from stairs.
Watch out for Sniper Rider.
Charger's
Two
mid.
mid.
Jump on tower.
We're
Jump on
up,
tower.
We're up. One left side.
There's a Gal.
Okay.
One mid, our
Ow,
side.
damn it. One behind me.
Got one.
I don't know where Roller is. He's left street. Rose left street.
We have
I'm
main
set.
yet?
Roller behind. Roller behind.
Got the roller.
Nice.
Got 3. Got 3.
One on right.
One.
One
We help
on
in mid.
On you.
right. One on right. There.
Hopping on
Charger's
tower.
on me. Charger.
They're wailing. I'm rotating.
Roller on me. Charger. Alright.
Where's the Gal?
Got one
Is he right street?
Gal's dead.
Roller in mid.
I'm on right
Dead.
street. Charger looking at me. Charger's still looking at me. Cool. I special putting it up on staircase.
Okay, moving up tower. Sniper Rider's on me.
Yep.
Moving up
2 on
staircase.
tower. Tower's fine. We got 2.
Nice.
Alright,
nice.
I have bubble ready.
We're up. Glasses. Call him. Find him. Call him. Left side.
I don't see him.
Left drop. Okay, he's fine.
I'm on the
Fine.
stairs.
Fine. I have it.
I'm sharking.
Sponge.
Roller on attic. I need help.
He's got nothing.
I'm out. Damn it.
Is it?
Bubbling.
They're coming from
Roller on me.
Watch the 52 behind.
Got
you.
roller.
Pencil.
We're
Back on
up,
tower.
we're up. Stack for lead. We're playing for our lead.
dead.
We're up and get a lead.
52 on stairs.
Nice.
Good lead.
Jump, Ava, jump.
Shots weak, shots weak.
Our lead, play for defense, play for defense, play for defense.
I'm out.
Ethan, get back, Ethan, get back.
Everybody defense now. I've half to special. Holding, building now.
I'm sharking behind.
There, see it? Ava's still up there.
I have to special.
Hopping on 10.
I whip.
We're set neutral. What are we doing? Mix up?
I'm on 10.
What are we doing? Mix up our play.
Mix up.
Mix up now.
Two right.
That's yours.
Need help. I got one.
Got one. Push it in.
Going right.
Oh shit, Trizuka left street. He got me on 10, he's coming up behind mid.
52.
He's on Dino.
You have a still.
Roller on their stairs.
What's behind you, Ethan? Check behind you. Walk back.
There's a jump. There's a jump.
Yeah, I see it. They wave
Watch
me.
tower now. Tower play.
Yep.
I'm out.
They're playing for tower now, careful.
Watch your floor there.
Yeah.
1 on 10, 1 on 10.
They have a pick. They have special. They're gonna be rushing in now. One. Got one.
Go behind him.
I'm dead to try.
2.
Okay, he's out.
Oh no.
Yep.
I died.
We're resetting our specials. I have mine for endgame. Holding for endgame. They put that bubble shift early.
Okay, I'm going left attic, I'm going attic.
Play around the staircase, play around the staircase.
Okay.
Make sure they don't get up it, make sure they don't
Yep.
get the special. On top, one got up.
One's up.
Down, they traded
Got
me
the
out.
sniper rider. I'm gonna die to roller.
I traded their shot.
I'm dead to roller.
They need checkpoint. I have nothing.
I'm respawning.
I'm out.
Get on tower.
That one,
Yes! Oh,
thank you. Recap. Sorry. There was one who climbed up staircase. Ava was on it. That was just bad shots on us, Ava.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really bad. I lost battle because of that. I should have popped it. I don't know.
But when they started to push, I
You
think it slipped.
overextended onto their back line. Your best play there was trading him out. You traded him out or jumped out, fine.
I just barely missed a kill on their pencil, which was what I was trying to do.
There.
But
Their best plays around that Trizuka. Then it's the displacement with the 9 specials on that cursed weapon.
yeah.
Tanto's just gonna get 7 cool. There's not much I can do about that, but we're picking them up. I don't think they're spending their tempo right. That's all.
okay, that's Rainmaker on Scorch. Game plan.
Do we have a score to play?
I can be. I can be maker for us. I know how to play.
Okay.
What's our main push, Ava?
Let me think.
Left street, right street.
Kirb, where do you like your sight lines on this map?
Either... Shit, I don't know, because snipe doesn't really work well for me as Swiffer. I'd
Do you play
say...
the left side of cage or do you play the right side of cage?
Probably left side. I like left side better.
Left side of cage is called carrot. Play on like a position that lets you see the ramp. Don't let them get up the ramp.
Gotcha.
Ava, no.
Let's. I think I'm gonna set ramp and then I'm gonna push their side of mid. So their street
ramp.
or left street. That's left street, right?
Left street. You're diving their like main platform.
Yeah.
Okay. Ethan, you go with. You have to go on the same side of that.
Alright, going.
There's 52. They have a wall. They have advantage. You need to go together.
Alright.
Alright, have fun.
Yep.
Going with Ava.
Here, watch people coming from our own side on the exact same play.
Yeah, understood.
Billy
I'm probably gonna be sharked up by Ninja Squid. Oh, Gal switched to T-Tech. No longer on Ninja Squid.
They have double kill.
Alright, watch roller. He's probably sharking right street. Yep.
Pressuring pencil.
They have that's wasted. That's wasted.
I got one.
Big tempo, big tempo.
We're up.
I'm moving right street. Rollers.
Push it right.
I'm down. Ava, behind you. Roller.
Sorry.
Traded.
Sock.
Okay, I'm resetting.
That's the Kirb, you reset defense, yep. Was it cool or useful or did I misplay it?
I didn't get any.
I didn't get it.
Roller set up bubble shield on ramp. That's not good for us.
They're crossing. They don't have a cross angle. They can't make it. They're in turn it.
I'm pressuring.
Keep guarding.
I'm pressuring our rip. There's two. I zip ready.
There's a special. Looks like it's Luca.
Yep.
I'm zipping behind him.
You can pull on you.
Okay, I'm down.
Get him, Ava.
Dive.
Nice.
I got one.
Got one.
Weak on street, both weak.
I got one in
We're
their
two up. Our play.
Moving up.
Play, call it. We want their kill up. Go up the ramp.
Okay, yep.
Dino, you got that?
We're already up.
You're behind, okay, good.
I'm out. Galen next.
Right, go back. No. You are dead pit. You just threw the play. Okay, we're done. Go right, go around right. Sucks. You need to go around right. If you go
Yep.
on the short, the back line is good.
Understood.
Die in the middle if he's gonna die now. Because you're at what, 10
Tech is weak.
Yeah, I'm so dead.
I should have taken that. I didn't know you were gonna do that.
I'm sorry.
Now you're chilling.
Now I know for next time.
You don't ever walk inactive. Cooler's up. Behind zone.
So I should have gone behind mid there.
Yes, because
Okay.
that's where our guys are.
I'm gonna drop behind him.
Roller. I traded out with roller.
That's 2, 3 out. Last is here.
I'm out. Dino.
Last is dead.
Thank you.
Respawns only.
Okay.
On you.
I'm not taking.
I got it.
Okay.
I have mid. Right side mid. They have 3 right side. We're playing to get up the right side. That's the play. Where do we want?
Okay.
Cooler right side.
Yep.
Thank you.
Dive it. Just dive it.
Yep.
On it.
I got bubble.
One
Sniper
weak.
Rider's dead.
Tech weak.
No,
Tech weak.
left side on me. I'm out behind team. Behind.
Shredded my bubble.
Sorry. I died.
When I say behind team, it's behind your pick. Sorry.
Still behind you. Kirb.
I'm dead.
Reset
I
our
died
defense.
shot.
Reset our defense.
I have zip ready.
I'm hopping up on
They
cage.
don't have bridge. They're contesting it though. Left side, 1.
Roller on ramp. Roller on ramp.
Roller off, 3.
Ah, fuck. I died.
Playing this roller.
Oh, that ramp. Shit.
We're playing that roller.
I'm dead to roller.
3 out. Ethan, you got to get this. Good pick. We reset. Ethan gave us tempo.
Yep.
Yep. The stop. They're gonna have to check point. Yep. I'm up though.
There's a ball.
Left from right.
Rollers on the
Pyramid
bottom.
2.
2.
Roller weak.
I stop.
Got him.
Stop dead.
Your right side.
Playing cooler down 4.
One on our pit.
Got him. That was a lucky ass snipe. Holy shit.
To the back top right.
Thank you, Kirb.
You're welcome. I'm dead to roller here, probably. Just kidding. Watch out. Shot. T-Tech, sorry.
Down away.
I'm out. Add cooler up. I'm gonna throw down wave.
Watch the pyramid. We're climbing up it. Punish him.
I'm dead to sniper
And
rider.
roller.
One on you.
Up. 1.
They're gonna grab.
Down to it. Drop 3.
That's it. Yeah.
Good stop. We can't get their ramp camera.
No.
Why not?
Their roller is just at a position where.
No, he's curling. We have a name for it. In game modes like Rainmaker, we ignore him. If I die, then it's Rainmaker's and Rainmaker's job alone. If you guys swap, we lose the push. You guys have to take care of it in the front, so the curl doesn't matter because he's not where the curl is. Right? If we just already at checkpoint and the curl's still in middle, he's not in position still. He's not playing the game. It's a 4v3. We have it. That's why the curl has to be fast, because if the curl's slow, we lose. The curl plays sucks. They're really relying on that roller working.
Yeah.
So we can crush the front. That's basically what it comes down to.
What's the map mode? Zones.
Museum.
Zones museum. If we're really concerned about roller, If we're concerned about roller, I can play blaster to try and flash roller angles, but otherwise, I probably stay on sword.
I'm swapping to CDS.
The main concern is that like you guys just have to win fun. Like I don't really about the roller because I can kill him. I think You guys just need to win the fight. We played to get up there, like... Is it ramp in zones? Is it? No, it has to be, middle.
No, it's only spinner. It's only spinner.
We queued too early, we didn't talk about this, alright. We want left side or right side? We want their glass or our glass?
Their glass.
Okay, drop it immediately, go.
Okay. Me,
Kirb,
Ethan.
you don't, you stay with me.
Okay.
Me, Ethan. We drop right.
Follow me. Kirb.
Okay.
You see those guys? You tell them how many drops. One drop zone. Look for zone pick.
One drop.
Yep.
Drop.
Zone pick.
Two dropped. Two dropped. Three are on you. Two on you now.
Kirb, zone across.
Drop.
Yeah.
Hopping up spinner.
I died. Okay.
Oh shit.
Roller.
I didn't mean to drop there. I'm dead.
You died. You just died. You're done. Yep, you jump out. You're basically diving that charger. Their charger dies, you come back. Ava lost their fight, you lost it.
Two jumping over. Got one.
Yep, got one.
I died T-Tech. Blue or
Oh, this is a really bad stuff. Five, left side.
Come the fuck
down
on. I'm out.
I'm set.
We're playing left side then. We're waiting for the stop to burn.
Okay.
We're giving them like 40.
Got the roller.
Left side. Keep playing through left.
They had one jump over.
I'm dead.
We're two up. Ethan died zone. We're two up.
I'm
Right
sipping
side.
pencil.
T-Tech on my ouch. T-Tech on my ouch. Watch it, Dino.
I got him.
Pencil jumped out.
He's going in the back. Two
Two
He's
left.
pushing right.
I'm on spinner. Roller in zone.
He's
Roller in zone.
still left. Nice.
Roller's still there. Dead.
Close up. You guys are pushing across, can you?
Yep.
Go for it.
I hate this spinner,
Turn down
dude.
chumps.
I got their T-Tech.
I got the
Pencil's watching me. I need to jump out.
One,
I jumped to mid.
3.
I'm out. Damn it.
Cool.
Holding for lead.
3 top mid. They're holding. They're gonna make a play.
Go to you.
We're responding to them.
I got roller.
Got T-Tech.
There's cooler.
We're good.
Zone.
One our zone.
In top tower.
He's on me. He's weak.
I got him.
Nice.
Towers top left. Towers one left.
I died
Charger.
pencil.
Roller's dropping in. He's got cooler now.
Rolls pillow.
Watch their glass. Watch their glass. One on glass. T-Tech.
I got him.
On me.
Okay,
He's dead. Cap zone.
One drop down. Right mid.
Right side mid. Right zone. Reset. We're split. We're broken.
Okay.
Reset back our platform. Reset our glass. Sorry, I set that up.
I'm stuck. I'm sharking their drop.
I have a beacon to base. Jump to base. I have a beacon to base. Jump to base.
One. Maybe got out.
Roller's dead.
I got their T-Tech.
Charger's resetting. Charger's out. Jumper mid.
T-Tech is in right glass.
Got him.
What did I die to? Oh my god.
I died bomb.
T-Tech's still there.
Jumped out.
Sorry, I died zone. They dove me. Left side zone. Play left. Play it too left. We're playing too left.
Yep.
I'm left.
I'm set
There's one
platform.
there.
Watch out for roller.
We have Kirb. We have
Throwing down chumps. I'm out. Team it.
Charger left side.
Roller's still there.
Still on left.
Roller's out of ink. You can grab him.
Got one.
Roller is still here.
I've got bubble.
Keeping the blood.
I got roller.
Left side. You can go with it.
Cap zone.
Ah,
Nice.
I died.
Okay, one left glass. He's got try.
Got 3. Got 3 out.
All right.
2 respawns. Same time.
Hopping up on spinner.
I'm set zone.
Target left zone. Target left.
Marked one. Where's roller? Okay, he's dead.
Roller dead.
Roller dead.
Hold on top.
Left drop. Left dive.
Try strike.
Left glass. Need help glass. Left zone. Need help glass.
Okay.
Able with me? I think you're on.
I'm with you.
Got him.
Roller's in on.
Cross. One zone, right side zone, drop.
2
tap right side zone.
2 and right.
I'm serving their flat. I got one.
Zone
Roller got bubble. He's dead.
Roller. Nice.
One bubble shield.
One still left. They got me. They're still there. They're
One
weak.
shot. Zone 9.
They rotated.
Got one.
Roller right side zone. Playing counter.
Got 2. It's just roller.
Roller on you.
Roller.
Okay. They're all respawns. I have bubble. Watch left glass. T-Tech on left glass.
2 glass.
I'm playing their
No drop
glass.
yet. Watching.
Use peek as a.
Cross mid. Charger's not looking at it. Charger's not looking mid.
They got cooler up.
Charger's
Job
mid
easy.
looking. Alright, their platform there. Special. 2
Trying to shove me out.
Shot's weak. Nice.
Got bubble.
One drop zone. One drop, I don't know what the hell that drop is. There's 2 drop left side.
Roller left last. Roller's dead. That's it. That's it.
Good.
That's it. Yes. Let's go, guys.
Good lockout,
Thank
by the way.
you.
They were forced to make that play. I don't know what the hell they were making, though.
We just beat a number 13 seed at number 34.
We just what?
They were 13 seed. We're 34 seed. That was a huge upset for us
Who's that? Who are they?
Why is that an upset?
because they were a higher
We're
seed.
34.
I don't understand how the teams. I'm just saying for teams.
Ethan, these people are probably well known to get seeded anything above like close to 10. We just showed up one day and kicked their asses.
Oh.
That is the equivalent of, oh shit, these new guys picked people who kind of can play the game's asses.
That's huge clout for us,
Charger?
Ethan. That's like huge clout.
Ethan, their Charger went 4-3-7. I think they didn't have a good defense. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I think we stopped their off.
Kirb say that they will find you again and destroy you.
Wait, really? I'm looking at chat.
Not a fucking enemy.
I'm just saying. They're not
The
gonna.
the
Not while I'm
Kirb v
around.
Kirb rivalry has been sparked.
Good play. I'm not hitting my shots.
Your
I'm
position
sorry.
you need to be.
I
Take
think
it
it, I think I just need to. I'm warmed up. I'm just. I think a bit
Nervous.
shaking. Yeah, shaking.
Yes.
You're 10-7. That's really, really good. Because usually you're 7-10. I'm just saying.
That's not good.
Well, that's really good. I need to understand. As a midline and as a frontline, your kill ratio has to be 50. Otherwise, the game isn't balanced. If your kill ratio is 10-7, which to me looks like 60, like you win 60% of your fights, you're really good at the game.
No, because those are assists. I'm trying to actually make plays.
Doesn't matter. Assists are picks. And if you don't count assists, then you don't count me as a player. And that disqualifies everything I've taught you. You are good as player. If you go negative, it's still fine because you're closer to 50 than most players. Most frontlines are actually like at 30.
Holy shit, guys! I'm
Their
actually getting
top
comp
11
results now.
Their roller went 6-11. You stopped
That's
them
because of
mathematically.
That was Avo, bro. That was Avo.
Hey, man, don't-
Shit, I just put beaks down there. That was eyes.
Okay, Ethan, you going up and fighting on their plat enabled me to play glass and just do just like vertical flicks over the edge to just stack on damage, which worked
Ethan.
really well for us. Your pressure prevented them from actually being able to deal with me, and I was able to totally shut down their glass.
Correct. Ethan, your positioning is so much better than that one guy called Kirb that after we identified that he was the problem, he got shut out of the game. They had no more plays after we shut out their guy. They were playing around one good player, everyone else is like kind of fine at the game. One good player, we shut him out, we win. We're playing to hyphenate all of our players because we're all good. If Ava's dead, we know I can play Ethan. We're good. They can't shut any one of us out because we're all together. Unlike them, we're a team. Okay, that's kind of offensive. They were pretty solid, but their plays were questionable as hell.
Yeah, no, that was good shit, guys.
Alright. Just let me breathe.
Yeah, we got a bit before our next
You're doing
match.
good. Also, we
Like-
kind of like ended early because we knocked out. So usually some games go like overtime. So brackets take a while.
Yeah.
This is when you go bathroom. In which case,
Yeah. I typically you'll never see me with you guys in person actually get adrenaline rushes and jitters, but I usually get that when I'm actually playing well in X rank. So and that's what fucks me up on games because I don't got my aim anymore and I'm not calm.
Okay, so Ethan, everything that Dino's has been teaching us has been how to win games, even when you sometimes fuck up and miss a kill. Having the fundamentals of a structure that works, even if we individually underperform from time to time while competing, ends up to not really mattering as long as we're consistently out-positioning the opponent and not just, like, completely throwing.
Alright.
You're allowed to mess up. Sometimes.
I don't want to mess up, that's the problem.
Bro, you need so...
you guys to mess up, you're human. But
Ethan,
me,
bro,
I gotta be the best VDS here.
You picked up this game in, like, what, a year?
What?
Yeah.
You're doing hella good for a year. And, like, when you look at top players, they've been playing this game for tens of thousands of hours. You know, like, you were nowhere near that point. You were allowed to make mistakes, and it's going to happen. You were going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I've been playing Smash for like 2,000 hours and I still make mistakes. Like, often. And this is like a much more technical game than Smash. There's a lot more stuff to be thinking about, so... The thing is, we just have to make less mistakes than the other team. That's all it is.
Yeah. Alright.
Otherwise, I feel really good about that.
I feel really good about that. That was awesome.
Yeah, the other thing is, I feel like that's a comp structure that we're gonna see a lot this tournament. That being like hybrid support backline, usually a pencil, 2 shooters, and like
Oh yeah, pencil's
a
definitely
midline.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quick
I'm
question.
like not scared because we have Kirb, and that's about it. Because like Kirb has gotten like the shots that he needs to when those shots dive Kirb. And that's what really matters.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a fucking sharpshooter.
Like, that is why I have like absolute confidence when that 52 on Hecklefish was curling up. I just don't care because that 52 can't kill Kirb. So I need to turn forward, help you guys make sure that 10 is a play, and then we get second checkpoint. We got second checkpoint. We push lead. Also, you guys did not see it. I was chickening tower on 3 people. Got it to 18 above me.
I was still there. I was there with you. You died after me there.
You were taking the shots for me, so like, yeah. And then when they were like, you died, and they were still shooting me, yeah, they missed.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Mail says you should never mess up.
That's kind of funny.
Hey, they're holding me accountable, unlike you two. I'm like,
I'm just saying, Ethan, if you miss if you miss a single bullet, like if you paint the ground and it doesn't hit the enemy, kill yourself.
Alright,
Off the spot. Like, you should not paint the entire.
You should be painting the ground only with enemy splats.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying, like.
If your bullets don't do 100 damage to the enemy to insta kill them, you're doing it wrong. I'm just saying. If you're not hacking and flying on the map.
You don't got like 18 power-ups for some reason. I don't want you on my team.
Ava, what's status? It's been 5 minutes.
Status, let me refresh again. We haven't gotten an assignment yet.
Oh yeah, fun fact. We had significantly less kills than they did, I think, across the board.
I think we did, yeah.
With that, no, in the last game we were crushing them. I think they were feeding in the last game. Like that was kind of really bad for them.
Where the fuck is the fucking talk button on this bitch? Sorry, I'm looking on my browser.
Good.
I want to get push notifications from Battlefy.
Yeah, that's why I have my email set to an email that I don't actually care about. You won your match. Go to the next bracket.
Oh, you're getting emails for those? I didn't even realize.
Yeah. It's weird.
It is goofy.
I mean, it makes sense.
I didn't get any.
Like,
That's weird.
Oh man, I'm tempted to go pee, but it's a little bit late for that now.
Just go, let out a little, come back.
Okay, I'm gonna speed pee. I'm gonna like not wash my hands and stuff. Don't say any slurs on my stream.
At least use hand sanitizer. Let's come up with new slurs, guys. Like,
No, don't. You're gonna get my stream banned.
You're also streaming?
Oh yeah, I have friends in my other server. I didn't want to post it in the Squid Squad server because Ava was streaming, so.
What's Discord chat saying?
Dude, I'm famous. Dude. How many people are watching? It's like 1 from Ava, how many from you, Kirb?
I have, wait, let's see.
18 viewers.
I have 3 viewers on my stream. I'm not nearly as popular.
Hell?
Aw, fuck.
Wait, no, how many does Ava have then?
What's up, YouTube?
I'm streaming on Twitch.
Wait,
You
then how
got
many
to
does
give
Ava
me
have?
your Twitch handles,
What?
actually.
Huh?
What's your
What?
Twitch?
Here,
Google this.
let me link it.
Oh my god.
You should
I was
drop a
like, I forgot to
sub.
ask Ava.
I have like 25 subs, I just don't have any
Dude,
like
there's 7
returning
people
viewers.
watching?
It's in VC
That's
chat.
weird.
Don't look at our comp
Is it has
status right
2?
now.
Oh, 2, okay. Hi, Krantz, are you watching? I think you're wait, that's weird. Hi, Krantz. 3 now.
By the 9, I'm tweaking.
Aw, shit,
hi,
I just
hi.
followed.
You have 9?
No, I said by the 9, I'm tweaking.
Oh.
I have like 25 subs. Just nobody watches my channel.
Hi guys, I'm back.
Welcome back. I don't think anything's happened. Check it.
I
Doesn't
can't,
look like it.
I can't enable push notifications on Battlefly.
Guys, we should stream bot one of us.
Real.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't wash my hands.
Where's these hand sanitizer?
I have my pee hands all over my controller right now.
I didn't need to know that.
That's how you get
You
the
did
good
not
grip.
need to tell the team
That's the
that.
good grip.
You're
The good
you're
grip?
bringing down the vibes.
Chat, my teammates didn't say anything naughty while I was away, right?
No, we said a couple slurs, that's it.
No!
Came up with new slurs. Like,
Oh wait,
So sad.
I played this Jackbox game. I think Elliot will know what I'm talking about. He's watching my stream. We were playing Jackbox once, and we were playing. I don't remember what it was called. Was it like that librarian one where you have to like come up with words and shit? And we came up with like a slur
match is
for
ready.
long-nosed people.
Match.
match is ready.
Match?
Carry
Elliot will
on.
know what I'm talking about. I hope,
25.
because I don't remember.
Alright.
Cherry bomb, seed 25. Okay.
Yippee yahoo.
Why don't we got like a banner for art? Why are we like a snake looking thing?
You
Blame
know
Ava
what
for that
you
one.
do, Snake? What?
The MTU snake.
Listen, I just didn't have, like, I didn't have an icon to use. It's fine.
Alright, I'll make one. I'll make one once at the end of the
I
day.
forgot that we're representing Michigan Technological University by like a half measure because we're not technically with them right now.
They're gonna expel us if we lose.
See, the problem is that we gotta like not swear. Unironically,
Mm-hmm.
Because we
might have to send we might have to send the VOD of the stream to like the guys upstairs if we want to become a team, like officially. Like,
Oh.
Oh my god.
Okay,
Yeah.
the guys upstairs do
Yeah.
not care if we swear. Like, I'm on the Smash Esports team. Like, we are pretty vulgar when we're playing.
Don't
And-
say like every single like. Don't be mean.
well, of course not.
Like, can I say what I say when I'm angry? Like, you've heard what I've said.
Why does everyone set their pass to boob? It's so uncreative.
Is it the password boop right now?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
LI pool passes boob.
Okay. Is the pool literally LI, the letter?
Yes.
Oh. Wait, different pool? Oh, okay.
Yeah, different pool. I'm not joining. I'm just waiting for you guys, so I can get the code.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's what I do. I don't do anything. Because last time, I think one of our teammates got banned by typing in chat.
Damn.
Typing in chat.
Well, they were typing really mean things to the other guys, and then they called the admin, and the admin's like, you are not allowed to play for the rest of the tournament, and it was really
Shit.
bad because that guy was our midline.
Wait, I might know this person.
What
Wait.
do you say that's so bad? Actually, don't say that on stream. That might
No.
Get, that might
We have it. We have a history. I'll just say that.
Sounds
Is
like
it bad?
Okay, no, this isn't the person I know. Never mind.
This is 80008.
Yeah. Pass is 8008.
Yep. Me and Ava are in already.
Wahoo.
I'm in. Potentially. Alright, what should I run? What should I run?
Okay, zones
what
on
are we
museum again. Looks like.
Wait,
No, it's not.
was
That was
last
last
game.
game.
Oh yeah, they're changing it.
Clam Blitz? It's Clam Blitz? Clam Blitz Inc. Ink block.
Our
Okay.
main shove should be going up like the main platform. Otherwise, like Angel side to the right. I think we should just shove it from
I'll take this.
stacks to that like 1-step, 2-step.
Okay.
We want to earn both our stack and the enemy stack for neutral to be successful for us to really get in. On defense, we give up both stacks. We play on our own platform, prevent them from getting up. If they're pushing from slick, we call it slick. If they're pushing from the staircase, we call it from staircase. We good?
Yep.
Okay. So our main is gonna be a shove. For that, is that gonna be something that we want to do immediately, or do we want to delay it?
No, we need clams first, which means we just want to win stacks. Just play it, pick a stack, play it, win it.
Okay.
Jack, we can use cycle.
On neutral and on offense, we want stacks. On defense, we can sacrifice the stacks to get back on neutral. We take back a stack.
Okay.
Dino. Me and you
Yes.
cycling?
Yes.
Kirb, are you gonna be playing from probably
Is that chumps or
our right
I
flag?
got chumps.
Probably yeah. One of the plats.
Okay. I can open right side, I guess. What do we think of that?
Sure, I can go with you right
I go
side.
with you, Ava. Ethan, you no.
Never mind.
I
Never
go
mind.
with Ava. Kirb, Ethan, you look for left stack. We're splitting
Gotcha.
2-2. Kirb and Ethan play for left stack. Me and Ava right.
Yep,
You guys,
on it.
if we lose stack, you just go back to defense. You're trying to hold mid, build clamp. Ethan, you're building first power. Throw it back to Kirb.
Got it.
Kirb, you're not putting the power in. You're just holding it. And when
Understood.
we're pushing, you just throw it. No one on stack. Nautilus here. You're trying to pick up the Nautilus.
Okay.
We're just holding it. We're baiting it because look at
Stack on
us.
up.
There's 2 left stack. They're playing there.
Marked 1, marked 2.
3 left stack.
There are 3 on right.
Fucking bomb.
Yeah, Ethan, don't go in too far. You overextended there.
Yeah, I bet.
They go back out. We're back on defense here.
We got one.
Push it right. Pushing their base. But make them
Okay.
they have to turn.
One on
Try
stack,
Zuka
one on
out.
stack,
2,
distracting them.
3.
On their base.
They're out. They're out.
Not on their slick.
Okay.
They're two trying to fight me. Up. I got 2. But
Power's
traded.
underneath the basket. Okay.
Okay. Do we push it?
We're resetting our neutral. Reset neutral.
Okay, reset neutral.
Let's say we can get back to middle. I'm taking the beacon. We're playing.
I'm popping up on stack. Got one.
Get back. We're
Stack,
playing too
got it.
slick. We're playing too slick. We're shoving it to there. Okay, we're waiting for that special. 2.
That killed me? Holy shit.
I'm dead. 2 left, 3.
4.
That was my bad. I died to Tri-Strike. I underestimated damage.
They're pushing through left.
It's like a chumps.
Yep.
What do we
Blocking
want?
ramp. Blocking ramp.
Make a better defense. There's 2 left stack. They're pushing it back a little bit 3-4.
They're trying to bomb us out. Careful.
Yep. They have more bombs than us.
Right.
We're building special. We're trying to use special.
I'm out. One. I'm out.
Try Zuka on right.
I traded not.
2 underneath, 3 underneath. Need help on these guys. You guys don't have anything. Okay, I have a special. I'm kicking them out now.
Oh, fuck. They wanted to clam. They're on our plat. They're on our
I
slick.
respawn.
Got 2.
Okay.
Down to it. Down special, sorry. Right side. 1 retreating.
Okay.
We're on defense. This is a fine
Oh,
push.
let's
1
go.
right stack. Let's play left stack. Let's 1 back left stack.
Going left.
One right
Third,
stack.
take the
Left
ball
stack.
immediately.
There's one on me.
And this is-
Nautilus.
Left.
There's 2 on the right ramp.
We're in our base. We're getting curled. Need help. Return, please.
Not left side.
Jumping out.
That one. We're playing left stack. We're playing right stack now. Okay, because there's 2 left. We play through right stack. Go immediately. Go immediately. Go immediately. Go
Okay.
immediately.
Shit.
I respawn.
Does he have it?
Yep. I'm on there.
Sucks. Push it. We have to push the climb in this way. This is dead. Dead push. We need pick.
Yeah.
Wait for pick. We're even. We're down.
Your right side. Two slick.
We're in response.
Watch slick. Watch slick. Watch slick.
Got it.
Fucking
I died, Ziga.
Zuka.
Oh,
Stay calm.
see.
Stay calm.
Got one traded out.
I couldn't get the power clam.
Play to clear a basket. There's one coming from staircase immediately.
One,
There he is.
one jumped up, one jumped up.
Right, clear attic. That's attic.
Damn it.
Ava.
They're still there, Ava.
Yep. Attic swing.
They're
Hang on,
going,
they're not.
they're going from 8.
Got one. 3 out.
I'm out of ink.
Underneath.
God damn it.
Dead.
Okay.
Clean. We have the
Okay.
push. We're push right stack.
Okay.
You have the ball. Kirb, you get the return. You jump to us.
I zip.
So
I
why
zip
are
ready.
you as a charger rushing at all? Ava, you should have been out there with all those things there.
I've got return.
Yep.
I'm zipping.
Good luck. You're trying to take one of them out.
Grabbing
I,
clowns.
I barely
I'm out.
missed
Two
it
out.
because
2
they're
out.
not
Last
on
two
me.
out. 4.
Marked him.
Mark, please. Thank you. We're 3 out. Rush. Oops.
Thrown down.
Put missiles. Put missiles. Rush up.
Okay.
I couldn't. I got bombed out.
Counter missiles. Counter missiles. We can try to get the end now.
What? Oh my god, bubble didn't come up fast enough. Throw it in.
Top left, attic. Top left.
Last is up there. Last is up there. I'm gonna grab clams.
Yep.
Okay.
No, Kirb, you never get clams. You stay here with us. It's
Okay.
Ethan and me.
I'm climbing up the attic. Ooh.
Reset.
I'm dead to Zuka.
We're resetting. Reset a play.
God
Reset a
damn
play.
it.
Reset a
Okay.
play. Kirb, you
Okay.
left. You died. We all died.
One coming up, one coming up.
I was on respawn. I was on respawn. I should have jumped earlier.
Kirb, you also get the return power.
Yep.
They're 3 right side. Looks like they're putting specials up now. They're putting their special team.
Nah.
They have a range
died.
to us.
They're trying to push slick.
They got a tribe.
That one. Covering our 4. I can't really do much. Right side. Right statue. Okay. Forfeit it. We go next match. That's it. I
Okay.
don't want to think about that. We were losing plays. That's it. That's it. Like, we just don't know where we are in this game. Screw it. Go next.
Yep.
If your mechanics are bad, pick out who was winning fights. Like, straight up. Who was, like, mechanically good. That's all we care about right now.
Their V shot was good. They kept picking me out.
Cool.
They know how
I got
to
a quad.
to
I got a
position.
triple. I don't see any issues, personally.
They're. I was taking a lot of fights against their not, and I think they had a positive record against me.
Correct. Nautilus,
yeah.
if you're going into the knot, you always win, or you'll always lose.
Yep.
You still have to take it because you have to win it once for us to win place.
Okay.
That said, use every advantage you can take, like, including them not looking at your direction and picking up.
Okay.
Alright guys, reverse 2-0.
Winnable.
Uh,
I'm playing second weapon.
Tower on cargo.
Yep.
okay. Cargo on tower.
Into a Nautilus, this is not smart. I say we play a delay.
Okay.
I think because we're playing delay, we lose. Our best thing is playing our left and hope they don't have Kirb. Our best thing is playing around Kirb. And
Okay.
then, if Kirb gets a pick, we play our offense because then we're up a player. We're really scared, personally, of that Trizuka. The bombs across the map, like artillery strikes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That guy, I think, is a problem. The shot does seem like a problem. Ink strikes, I don't think they get enough of them for me to be concerned about that on the saucer. Cooler is cooler. Rain is rain. They just like shoving together. They go in pairs. Don't expect them to be alone. I don't have anything else to point out. We good?
Yep.
Wrong.
Yeah.
What's our play?
So, you guys remember our neutral sets?
For
and
neutrals. Yep.
shit? Okay. We should not go for the split to open. I think.
Spear instead? I think we spear them.
Spear them. Okay.
All 4 right stack immediately. We all rush.
Okay.
Me and Ava highest up. Ethan, you're watching our left and right.
All right.
So we're going out. Yep, we go top right, drop out. Ethan, you're staying like to watch the left. Like if they come from like that, they're right.
Okay.
Go, keep going.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. But
Okay.
Yep. You're watching our left, Ethan. One underneath.
Slosher on left stack.
We lost the second the blaster got there before us. I'm just saying. We're now set like on a high defensive all right.
Got one. Got 2. I traded out.
We're gonna
It's just the
layer up.
Nautilus. Nautilus is last. Nautilus is last.
I got one trade.
They have jumps. Be careful. Guy coming up the wall. That one.
I got blaster.
Okay, we're up. Nautilus.
I'm zip.
Down on Nautilus. No, I'm here. Charge Nautilus. Let's go. Rush it. Rush on the Nautilus, Mark.
Slosher down below. He's in mid. Oh, the Nautilus is still there? Come on, guys.
Come on. I died to not. I waved.
That one.
Wasted it.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a bad jump. That's a bad jump.
Reset. We're falling back.
Damn it.
When we reset, we're immediately
Reset neutrals? Question mark?
Reset
Yes.
neutrals.
I'm set up neutral.
I'm
They both
they know
contest.
I'm here.
Slosher down below.
I'm
That
dead.
one. Lost is weak.
One more left.
Lost is dead. 2 out. There's guys on tower. Let me do this.
Oh, fuck.
Walk up to it. They don't have it.
One in our pit. Last
One
one.
left.
Last, nice.
They still
Got blaster on pit.
One last tower. Two more tower. Two more tower. Right side.
Two on tower.
Sucks. Good try. Guarding bridge.
Got Nautilus, traded out.
They
We're
dropped
guarding
it.
this point. We're guarding where I am.
Okay.
We make sure they don't get tunnel. There's contesting tunnel immediately. They're contesting through tunnel.
Blaster and tunnel,
The guys
dead.
through tunnel. The guy, okay, good. Then we can try contesting tower from here.
Two on me, two on me.
Drop right. Take him off.
I'm dead.
Not dead.
Slosher up top, Slosher on my ouch.
They're coming in. They're
Got
coming
one.
in. They're going on tower. They're going on tower.
Blaster down.
Blaster's last. Blaster's
Win this
last.
fight.
Nice.
I got
Blaster
blaster.
jumps. Clean the
Okay.
jumps. Clean the jumps. There's one more there.
I died.
Got Slosher.
Watch the two behind tower in middle. They have rain. Let's take our right tower back. Play defensive. Play our right tower. One sharking our bottom right. Need help in pit underneath bridge. Need help here where I'm bombing.
Got one.
Go come up the wall. In our right tower now. Last
I'm out. Slosher left on my ouch. He's in mid. Going up to you, Dino.
Blaster got me.
What the hell is that guy doing?
Oh.
Okay, we're playing
I
with
tried to
tower.
slot.
Blaster,
One pit,
blaster
one
throw.
Yep. We're playing our karaoke. Ethan, we have this.
Two marked. Nautilus is left.
You just had to survive that. I'll be dead on.
I got one.
No, I know.
They're not weak.
We're
Got their knock. Got their knock.
Top right, rush him.
Skirmishing Slosher on right.
I
You got him, Ethan?
I got Slosher.
Got him.
Alright.
Nice.
Hey, take left tower, Ava.
I'm on tower.
Karaoke, leave bottom floor. Gonna put it.
I'm on tower.
Blaster's by you,
You guys
Ethan.
ready to
Kill
fight
him.
me here?
Kill him.
Sorry,
Kill Blaster.
Left wall. The guy-
I'm dead. Dead.
Blaster tower. Got him dead. Sorry, Eva. I meant pushing their left foot. Their left side of the map.
I'm a
That's a bad call.
All good.
Got one.
I'm on our tower.
Where?
I died.
Where is that? That position? We're not calling a tower anymore. We need an in.
Kill him.
Okay, we're calling a tower. Dead.
Blaster bubbled on right.
I'm down. No, trying to get the
Traded out with
We're
Slosher.
playing to cover the tunnel. We're playing to cover tunnel. Cover tunnel.
Our plat, there's a blaster still.
Okay, we lost plat. This sucks. We clear plat. The blaster here on plat. We ignore tower. There's this blaster still. Okay, now we can look at tower. Quick try.
Okay.
We got white. Let's go. We're around Robin, so we're going.
Yep.
That was a bad call. Like that was bad. We should have gotten a double there off of that.
I think we play all 3 games, don't we?
I don't know. Check the roof. I don't know. Ash. Hopefully it is. We can play more.
Ethan, what are you dying to?
Blaster and Slosher.
Is that a range issue, do you think? You're just getting too close?
Mechanic issue.
Yes, we do play all 3.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, if we can't take
Wicker again.
if we can't take set, let's take this game.
Okay. I'm making a comeback. Okay, actually, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Sword is not the pick for this map.
Blaster.
Yeah. I'm gonna go range.
How do you need me to adjust?
Bomb structural.
Suction wave.
Okay. So we have double wave now. That might be good for Rainmaker.
I'll swap to CDS. Because I can be Rainmaker.
Go wave.
If
you go to Super Chumps, I think it's worse.
Alright, switch back. You have 8 seconds.
Wait, here. I'll go S-Blast. So we'll have Booyah.
You got 1 second.
S plus VDS. I'm good with this.
Okay.
Alright.
I wasn't. But okay. We didn't talk about positions on the map. We're playing left side defense.
Okay.
I think we can win the defense. I just think we can get practice with left side.
Okay. How are we opening?
Left side, all.
Alright.
Left side all.
We're not diving bunker. We're setting up defenses. We're building, we're just playing left. We want kind of pop special on this wall here. Oh god. Alright, these guys coming into us are our picks. That one.
Slosher on us.
I'm moving up.
Okay, they're down 2.
I'm down.
Right mid. I don't know how we lost.
Got Nautilus.
Right mid. He's last.
On my out.
Respawns now.
Hurting him. He's weak.
Got him.
He's dead.
Again.
There's one in there.
You can watch the right side.
Yep, I
I got one.
I'm out.
hit him once. He ignoring me.
I got another.
Nautilus is dead. Nautilus is dead. We're out. We have right side mid. Who else take? Who's first take?
There's still one in mid.
I got it.
I can take, I guess.
What side?
On us, Ava. Slosher dead.
Nautilus is up.
Okay.
I've almost got bubble.
I blew up.
Shit.
Keep shoving through.
Watch out behind you. Gals behind you. Gals behind you. Gals behind you.
Okay. We run as far as can because we got codes. We just run it. On defense immediately, we play on the left here. We see if they go right. They're playing left. Good. Watch that curve.
Yep.
I'm dead.
I'm out here.
We lose it. Just
Got
choke
one.
this.
They just rushed up to me. I didn't have anyone at my back.
Ethan, get ready to go in. Go.
I'm set.
Got one. Got two.
Got one.
Last
Not as
one.
weak.
Yep.
Thank
you.
you.
Down.
Nice.
Who's take? We lost it.
No, reset.
I got slow.
Where's me?
I got another.
Nautilus to set up their defense. They're gonna have ranks to push. I'm gonna have. Alright.
Ooh, I died.
Right corner. There's a fight on the right. Why are you guys not telling me this information?
I'm heading out.
I don't have a dive. I'm in off position. I'm in double.
I died.
Yeah, they're gonna get me. Get in here last
I'm
time.
down. I died.
Okay, we gotta pick. Game is knocked out now. We have to get it on. They fed for that. So Nautilus is around the corner. Nautilus is weak.
Not as weak.
We're pushing it right. We go right immediately. Ethan.
That's 2.
I got it.
Go right. Keep going right. Keep going right. Keep going right. Keep going right.
Slosher on left.
You guys in the front.
Onto the mid. I got
Keep
him.
going right. Keep running it right. You're fine.
I blew up.
Watch out behind you.
Popping me out.
I did pop blew up.
No, that was not you. That was perfect.
Kirb, pop a bubble.
Up here.
Behind us.
I couldn't get him.
Okay, push is dead.
Got one.
We're push is dead. We're gonna build specials. We're gonna have a play here.
Okay.
Ethan needs to lose this. We'll win it. There we go. Trades out.
I'm holding mid.
We're playing our neutral, so all 4 left. All 4 left.
Okay.
Coming in.
Sharking
Okay.
left.
We're waiting for them to make a play. We're responding to it. We're trying to
I got
get better.
2.
We're 2 up. Okay, good. We're playing.
I got 3.
Move in.
I got it.
Clean.
Alright.
Ava, you're good. Push up.
I pop blew up.
Watch the corner.
Watch out for Slosher. Watch out for Slosher. He's still sitting in the corner.
Cool.
Alright.
Got him.
Now we go. Watch out.
Go, keep going.
I got another one before I died.
I got not.
You needed to run ahead. You needed to run ahead. Either Ethan stays in the bubble shield and you both stay there, or Kirb, you go up first. Ethan
Okay.
went up first, that was a misplay. Absolutely. They're doing the thing they did to us. I'm gonna get the stop.
Reset the left. I traded Slosh.
Good. We're playing mid side. We're playing
I'm out.
Oh shit, I didn't mean to drop there.
They're stalling us for good reason. We're trying to win this.
Watch left.
We're gonna win the corner. One with the pit.
Yep. Way better.
Oh, motherfucker.
We're getting outside. We're waiting. We're stalling here. We're gonna counter stall. Here's the front. Right side, right side, right side.
Rain stop.
We need pop. You pop and go right, Ethan. You hit.
Got it.
You fucked up.
Tapped low, nice.
Someone
Yeah,
that's
I'll
not me, please.
I'm
We need to
taking
take
it. I'm
it.
taking
We
it.
lose the game if we don't take it. You gotta
got
pick
it.
it. We go right. Go right.
Got Slosher.
Nice,
Go.
nice, nice.
Nautilus is in mid.
I blew up.
Go.
Ah, I'm dead.
We hold it here. We're waiting for our team to respawn.
Not
Stay alive.
mid.
Stay alive. Keep staying alive. Good pick. Team needs to get here. Please.
On my way.
Down. Shit.
Mm,
You could have backed out.
Slosher. Yeah, I should have.
When I died, it was really risky. I should have just dove there. No, I don't know. That's on me. Winnable game. That's fun. What's the main problem though?
Their knot was.
We kept losing fights to Not. I think that was like probably our biggest issue.
uh,
I don't think we respected its space.
I
Mainly.
was playing really well.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm not sure if there's anything that I should have changed.
Get 20 more kills. I don't know what to tell you.
But the S blast is feeling good today.
Yeah, that was pretty good. How did the tries I got 8 try strikes. How did that feel?
I felt nice.
For who? Just Kirb?
I don't know. I wasn't.
You are the target of affection. If you are not, I fucked up.
I don't think I was super. Okay, it's hard to say because like when we were actually going through like the chokes, that kind of just became like a blur. That was me. I threw Booyah Bomb and I was like, okay. I like locked in like thermal vision
That's why we
on
lost.
like 2 dudes who I could see. And I
You
ended up
threw
getting the
Booyah
picks.
on the
but-
choke was my mistake. You
Huh?
didn't call Booyah on the choke, that's your mistake.
Okay.
Ethan not responding to it, Ethan's mistake. Kirb not taking Rainmaker where I expect it, honestly my mistake. Good game. 18 push into them was pretty good. I fucked up. I thought we would not go. That was a pretty good game though. Like 21-9. Good stuff. Nautilus is always my bane of existence. There's not much I can personally do against it. It's just you guys like the mid lines, like when you're contesting you just gotta win it.
Yeah. I'm typically the person solo queuing, having to take care of knots.
Also on ship shape, we probably lost the second we made a spear, and we didn't set up. Ethan, when I said you cover left, that means like you stay on the floor. We didn't get to the punch before the blaster be lost. That's it. Ethan needs to be the guy that punishes the blaster. That's what we're looking for. We haven't ran out spears. I'm not really upset, but like theoretically we wipe out there. Like the setup was perfect. I saw it in my eyes. If it was 4 of me's playing with that connotation, we just knock out. Right there. Kirb, your main look is that you're like kind of there with us. You're sniping him if we like don't get a pick, but you're also sniping the next player.
Yeah.
Then you get tower and you're looking left. Ethan and Kirb are now immediately looking left. Ava can determine if they need a turn. Otherwise, Ava's staying in the front camping up the tunnel. Like we're like on their bridge, they can't do shit. Damn, sucks. Also cooler's stupid.
Huh, yeah. Excuse me.
Okay.
This set did also remind me one more thing. If we end up in matchups where we feel like we're having trouble due to like not having enough AoE in matchups, I can rotate to S-Blast pretty easily.
Oh yeah. I think it's more like Ethan did not know how to win any of the like fights that I think he should have. Like Blaster or something.
Yeah, I was afraid. Move up.
You will, unless I tell you that was a bad fight, you shouldn't have taken the fight. Every single fight you've taken so far is just, if you win it, we win games. Straight up. And Ava's not missing their fight, straight up.
Yeah.
Like, Ava literally got us a quad. That was a bit beautiful, that got us to 18. We misplayed after that. Ava, you should have dove. There was no point in you holding Booyah to get around the choke, they were dead. You need to be already at pedestal to force them to look at pedestal and not Rainmaker, and then when they contest you, I throw the Ink Strike on top of you, you pop Booyah then, so you don't die. You put Booyah on your feet to like keep the last like the walk to it open, and Ink Strike pushes Ethan through. Kirb's walking through, I'm behind making sure they don't curl, but at that point I'm in the front because they're already in the front. Because you forced them to be in the front, you couldn't make the curl. They couldn't make the curl if you were there.
Yeah.
So you should just walk up. You don't need to pop your special when they're dead. Even though you want to, like, so you were able to throw immediately the Booyah. No, you pop it when they're there. They were not there. That was on me, and I should have I wasn't ready for the S-Blast pick. That was on me.
I'm gonna use the bathroom real quick.
Good. That's fine, because like what that tells me is like if we communicate a little bit more before the match, like if we had that stage done, probably would have been fun.
Yeah. I'm sorry about like the quick pivot, but like
no, for sure.
There are just certain maps where Stamper just can't do it.
No, no, it's fine. That weapon swapping is completely not. We just have an OTP Squiffer, so I can't really do things on Junior.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cherry Bomb is currently rank 5 in our pool out of 43, so...
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We are currently 19 out of 45.
Cool. And we seeded at 43, that's pretty good. Sadly, we couldn't get a game off of them, that would have been great.
I will also say, since this is another college team, this might be a team that we might want to like get in contact with at a later time to scrim.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, friend the captain.
Your team was good. Let's scrim later. Always keep their number or whatever. Like the Discord.
We can access their tag. It's on the page.
Also, if you can find the college Splatoon thingy, because that might also give us credibility, because if there's multiple colleges doing it and it's not just us, and more official. And then we can get funding and then buy like a Switch or something. Or like controllers or something. I think what we want is controllers, so that if somebody has a controller problem, we can just loan it to them for the year. At least when they're playing comp. I would personally be in favor of getting like an extra Switch, so that somebody who's new to the game can not spend the money, because I think the threshold to like play Splatoon at the competitive level was a little bit too much.
You need a Switch
the
game, and you need a fucking, what's it called? Switch Online.
Oh yeah, and then if you want to like get the Elgato set up and like the streaming set up, you have to do your own thing for the Switch.
I think I'm gonna run CDS every time there's Rainmaker, because do you guys think I'm doing?
Wavebreaker is solid. You also want the bombs so that you're not dying. I needed you to have the bomb. Chumps doesn't work in Rainmaker.
Yeah, but
it works if they have Charger, but they don't have Chargers anymore.
I can't throw it down when I have the Rainmaker.
Yeah, but that's fine.
You can't use any special when you have the Rainmaker.
Bro,
that's why I'm saying I should switch to CS so that we have beaks instead of bombs.
No.
No, we want bombs. We want bombs.
Okay, Rainmaker is fast enough where beacons won't matter. If we're
Okay.
getting resets on with beacons in Rainmaker, we're doing it wrong. We're just straight up not winning. In Clan Blitz, yes. In zones, definitely. In tower, yeah. Because the reset's slower on those modes. Rainmaker, you saw how they're already at our chokehold the second they kill us.
Yeah.
We can't beacon jump. There is no... You just respawn there.
Okay.
Unless the stage is like super big, like Wahoo, maybe. But on that stage, you need the bomb to help cover chokehold more. And in that stage, Wavebreaker is really good at covering the chokehold because not only does it cover it, it forces them to waste like ink to break it. And if you mark them, it's better for us because they have so many bombs that we can't see them. I should have thought CDS was better. I don't know why. I was completely fine with double Wavebreaker, personally. I was just thinking about what should I do, and I didn't say anything, and I didn't realize that we're at 10 seconds. I guess mentally I registered it, but like I didn't sit bad on me.
Okay. It's my bad for like even bringing up Range Blaster first because I realized pretty quickly that like wait, you're not gonna be playing Zap and range.
I was thinking about Zap.
Yeah.
That's a problem. I was like, is match up yet?
Yep, it's up now.
It's up now?
Cool. Yeah, I heard the ping.
Okay, C24, Splat Scad, black team. So this looks like a college team as well.
Cool. I mean, that's what it said, right? Are we at? Yeah, we're on two. Ooh, I'm rusty.
They want us to make the room.
We're in LI pool already, so I think that should be fine.
Whatever password you feel like. Not my room.
Okay. Create a room.
Also, if they're a college team, I'm just saying, they don't have me on their team.
They don't got a
They're just
dino.
probably all like mechanically 2300s and probably not team. Unless they have like a college coach. What's the password?
8888.
Mild. That works. In which case, I don't know like if that's a thing. College coaches for Splatoon.
Oh, yeah, totally.
No, I doubt.
Hey,
It's a thing, it's just not common.
What are the maps for this round?
That's a good
I
question.
don't know where they are.
They should be in IPL somewhere. Let me see.
Okay.
LI maps. Okay, round 3, zones on Meko.
Damn, this guy can pull it up way faster than I can Google what that means.
Clan Blitz on Museum for game 2, and then Tower on Manta for game 3.
What's game 1?
Zones on Mako.
Make a zones.
We have a main for this.
Yep.
Oh, do we have a main for this? Oh, it's Hagglefish.
No, we don't.
I think we were going before.
Well,
I forget what mode we were doing, but Ava on left stack / street. I go right.
You mean right stack? Like far street or far?
Right.
Far stack?
Right. I go right stack. Ava goes left street. That was her play before.
Ava, Ethan attack their stack immediately. I'm guarding Kirb. I trust it. Left stack. Our stack.
Okay. R stack or left stack? Because that's different. Okay.
Ours is left. Ours
Really?
is left.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm
The
thinking
far
of a different
stack
map,
is on the
sorry.
right side.
Left stack, yeah,
This
sorry.
is Mako.
I'm doing like 3 things at once right now.
It's a different one. Our last match is LI. So we. Being
I'm gonna
unhelpful.
switch I'm gonna switch to CDOs.
In this stage, zones either work.
Yeah, I just like chumps.
Because we don't know what they're running. If they're running a charger, chumps is stupidly broken. I'm just saying.
Oh.
Ava, did you get invite?
Wait.
Cold Y or something?
Wait. Send invitation? Oh.
Yeah, so you have to like
do
cold
it.
Y something.
What are you doing with this?
Real.
These guys are interesting.
We're college boys.
They're not interesting. I'm interesting because I'm a fucking bad room holder. I'm not.
I think they're just being difficult.
Practice.
You'll get used to it.
Okay.
And trust me, every single tournament's slightly different. It's great.
Mhm.
Like that small difference is like, dude, this sucks. I don't like this difference. Even if it is more convenient. I like how it's Ethan too.
What's wrong with that?
No, I just like it. It's fun.
Yeah.
These guys have like ego names: Virtuous, Kitsune, Arcadia, but the A's upside down, Asasa. Like those look like not names made up by 4-year-olds. And that's how you tell they're sluts.
Did you guys see what they were
Our
running?
main neutral is Ava and Ethan on our own snipe, so like don't drop in yet. If you see an angle where you can just drop and get the their stack from right below, go for it. You have to let us know you're doing that because they're gonna pull to you guys. They're gonna look for that. Which means me and Kirb have a different approach to bunker. Kirb now goes to snipe, we rotate, I just make sure they don't curl us.
I'm
If that
switching
doesn't
back.
work, but you guys can't drop down and go right, then we drop down and go left for left stack.
Okay.
We go on the opposite side where their players are. If there's more people on left, we go right. If there's more people on right, we go left.
Okay. So, for neutrals, like, where are we setting?
Snipe.
Snipe? Okay.
You are snipe. You are right side, so you can make the play. Right? You're not dropping down anymore. If you drop down, you die.
Okay. Play from snipe. If I drop down,
And if you're dropping down, you're basically saying that you want to kill this guy. And well, that's fine. You just have to kill the guy.
Right.
Okay.
Don't flub it.
Okay.
I'm with me. Otherwise, blitz it immediately. Like you should be climbing up that right stack immediately. Ethan, you're staying in the front. Ava wants to climb up.
So the left street?
Also, make sure if go right stack. You're not climbing the stack yet. Ava's climbing the stack immediately. You are not. You're making so they look at you, so Ava can kill them. If they drop left, you kill them because they're on the floor.
Okay.
And you're on the floor already. Watch the leader. This is really good for us.
Okie dokie.
Leaders top left. There's snipe.
Okay. We're dropped.
Zap dropped.
Kirb, be careful. Kirb.
Distracting them, distracting.
Down it, snipe. Down a bomb. Right side.
Got
One
one.
weak on right.
Kirb.
Oh,
I can't get you, leader.
you're right. Oh,
Good try. Cover back zone. We have control of it.
Damn it, I'm dead.
I did zip to not die.
I'm gonna die here.
You're dead anyway.
I'm zipping their.
There are two on our stack.
That's two. Left.
Yeah.
Down it.
So sad.
Resetting neutrals this sucks. I play really bad this game. They have a trap tank. We're gonna wait out the trap tank.
Shit.
We're going right side because they're left. Right. Their charges there. We're pushing that right.
Got one.
One our plat, they're dead. Okay.
I'm moving up.
Go for it. They're shoved there.
Watch out for you, leader.
Okay.
I'm dead.
I'm getting leader.
Got one.
He's jumping out. He's jumping out. Watch out. One on you, Ethan. Jumping you, Dino. Leader's going left. Leader's going left.
Oh shit.
I'm dead here, probably. No, never
I'm
mind.
zipping. Oh, mother, I'm dead.
Can I jump?
No, there's a leader. Try. Okay, yeah, because he's guarding it and baiting for leader. Right side me. Down. Right side zone.
Left side.
Left side zone. Left side zone from left side zone. We're on Ava.
Ah, I'm dead.
You were alone. You didn't call that you were there. I did not know what you were doing. We're playing to earn the right stack back. We want to win the neutral. The left stack. We want our left stack. We lost it. Okay. What are we looking at? There's two left. We were setting on special, so we're all stalling, right?
I got one.
We're all waiting for something.
Waiting for shot. I killed shot. I got two.
Cool. Win the floor bottom right here. Be careful.
Okay. I'm zipping their leader.
Tank run. Ethan, right side. You should be covering street.
I got one pick.
Watch out. Left stack on your zip.
Okay, got him.
Dive the leader. You need to see something on. Right stack.
Watch their stack. Ah! Sorry. I'm dead.
I'll get right stack.
Stack still.
There's one on the right stack. They're just sitting there. I had them marked.
They're pushing from left side. We're waiting. They're gonna have specials here. They have a lot of coordination. 2.
Is there E
They're
leader?
poke up.
Two on our stack.
I'm sure.
I'm out.
Ah, but I died.
Got one.
There's 3 left side still.
Got 2.
Got pick. Great pick.
I'm set our snipe. Okay.
Got one.
Nice. Watch out. There's a zap on you.
Blitzing through
Right
this.
side jump. Fuck. Okay,
Got one.
Leader's still on the floor. They're blocked.
Got him. Either's dead.
The leader's dead. We can catch him up.
Oh my god, I'm crazy.
We're 3 up. Tank zone, Kirk. Thank you.
I'm on their snipe.
Push up. Get stack. Right stack. Kirk.
Right stack. Got you.
You want to contest the bunker? Yeah, where that leader is.
Got one.
One more still. Leader still alive.
Marked leader. I can't reach him from here.
I died. Their shot's weak.
Yep. This is our lead. This is our lead. Play up with us, Ethan.
Can't. I'm on my own right now.
Got 2.
2 dead?
I clean them up. 3 out. I clean them out. Ethan, you're fine.
Yep.
Leader's still in bunker. We want to contest them. Ava. You see the leader? Mark.
Watch out for try. Watch out for try.
Right stack. On top right stack.
I see him.
In mid now.
Got one.
Good pick.
Right stack still. Dead.
They're diving. Watch their leader.
I died to E leader.
E leader's marked.
Doolies. They crab.
I'm going to you.
One dead.
This week.
At the end game? Okay, good.
Oh.
Good luck. They just kept feeding us. You notice that? They just dropped.
I started hitting shots. That was like it.
Good. If they're feeding that, you should hit those shots for sure. If you
Yeah.
just lose that shot, we probably lost the game there.
Mm-hmm.
Ava, you did really good going up top left. Noticing that the leader was on right, but you're fighting fair fights. That's fine. They're supposed to be fighting fair fights. You win that fight, you want to rush that leader.
Okay.
You didn't. You stalled out. We were winning points anyways.
Okay.
Also, Ethan, that was a really funny. They both were on your death bomb, both dead.
Oh, seriously? I didn't think that you followed up on it.
What's
I
next
punished
map?
them because you let them drop. They should not have chased you. I don't know what they're doing. Kirb.
What?
What's the next map, Kirb?
Oh shit. Sorry. Hang on. It is. What is this? Round 3. We're on. Clan Blitz Museum. Yeah, Clan Blitz Museum.
Our main hold is that block that leads up to our own spinner, right? Me and Kirb are here. If I need help, I'm calling specifically Ava. Ethan, you're kind of holding the middle there. When we win that fight, let's say we get a double, you're going to attack their block immediately, and you're trying to get the spinner first. You should be getting up to the spinner first. Ava should be second. Your main goal is getting Ava there. You're just building a path to let Ava damage it. Do the thing you did earlier where you let Ava cause havoc and be crazy. You're really good at skirmishing. You want to drag fights to the middle.
Alright.
So either their block, their glass area, where we would drop into the glass, or middle. That's where you want to make your plays. You're gonna lose there because they have a leader. That's fine.
Yeah.
You're baiting for it.
Okay. So, do you want me and Ethan to
Go
blitz
right.
our opening?
Drop. Let's it. Let's
Right.
it.
Let's
Okay.
Alright.
Kirb alone. Be careful there.
Yep.
If you call 3, I'm turning immediately. Kirb.
Yep.
Call it as early as you can.
All right.
1. Go for it.
Okay. There are 4. All 4 of them are up there. One of them is on spinner.
I'm loading. I need to shield for a sec. I got one.
Got 2.
I can't get leader. I'm last.
Okay. Yeah, you're good. You're good. We went up.
I'm dead. I dead to you leader.
We lost on the trade. We lost completely the trade because you died. You
Killed
stay
you.
there. You're building special Kirb. You
Okay.
did not need to extend over the platform.
Two left. I'm dead.
We're guarding it. Ethan, we guard. Just guard.
Ouch. I'm out big.
Yep.
I'm out.
Just on
Fuck.
Watch out. They're gonna try for a box play.
They're not
I got
getting the
Zoom.
box point on them.
And they have...
That's
they have-
2.
Yeah,
That's
pushing
3.
them.
Out.
Just careful here. Just 2.
They crab.
Okay. They're gonna be pushing through that one.
Got 10.
Crab's dead. Nice. Watch out for E leader.
Previously,
Trying for a box play.
down on bottom right. We're not even. Okay, they have it.
Where?
Left side, left side pillar.
I'm dead to E leader again.
They had a jump.
This stage is a lot better for losing.
fuck, I'm down.
We're dead. We're setting our defense.
Okay.
They have a lot of plays on us.
Ah, I died.
Box play, box play. Jesus Christ. I can't peek anywhere.
Nope. You're playing into a leader on a stage that's leader favorite. Leader's dead
I'm
here.
down to fucking tank.
Back up way more than you need to, Kirb. And you're basically just camping so they can't get around corners.
Okay.
Left side. Like, we're covering our... Okay, we're clean.
Okay.
Alright, I have a special. We're playing to get mid here.
E-leader sitting on their pillow.
Fight mid.
Moving up. Fuck! Are you I'm
You got
dying.
Unit zip leader. No! Ah, they got me. Damn it.
Damn, I missed it one. No, they're just better at winning. But, it looks like his last play in my opinion.
Got one. Ah, Jesus Christ. I can't.
Fucking E-leader.
Yep. Just call it that you got picked. We don't have time to complain. Ready, comp game. Got one. Got leader. Leader's dead.
I'm with you, Dana.
Got him up. Keep pushing
Dana's.
up. Yep. Please. Okay, push up. Leader's the ball.
I'm zipping.
Fire one. Left side, Ethan.
Ah,
Right here.
I got one and died.
One on me. He's low.
Right. Shit. Why'd you go through front? Oh, it's dead play. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that was such a clean triple if I was using bluffing. God damn. Leader's in front. Also, why didn't Kirb have the ball?
I'm playing left side. Oop, Julius.
Down, wave.
Leader's looking at me. Leader's still looking at me. Okay, I have the main special. Okay,
I'm zipping.
I have a scout tank. We got two. Scout tank's expired. Scout tank's dead, maybe?
I'm zipping crab.
Two on the board, just four people here. Yep.
One next to you, one next to you. I got him.
One right here still. Even you won this, there's more abilities. Come on, take her out.
Three leaders weak. Oop.
Got him.
So we're pushing
I'm
you
dead.
throw the ball forward.
Damn it, I'm dead.
Okay. You both throw the ball forward as far up as you can. I threw the game, by the way. I didn't hit down. You throw the ball forward on the top ledge, then we push the top ledge. Don't
I got
push the
one
ball.
pick.
I'm picking up the balls by the leader against 3 kills.
Uh-oh. I just zip. I'm dead.
You're through because you did. Like, you just sniped and stuff. We're on defense again, down the leader. I keep the corner on the leader. That's why I do the pump. There's 3 balls. They just kind of limited. They're the first ball. Got one. Oh, they have a captain. Down a captain. Captain's good on the field. So weird. We got comped. Like, straight up. They just have better weapons.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything we can do because 1, we don't study this stage. We haven't yet. 2, we're just not gonna do good combos. 3, they have a better comp so they can control field.
Okay.
Hopefully, what's the last stage? Let's see. Take it back.
Let me see. Tower on Manta.
Really? This isn't the best leader stage. I know that for a fact. That leader won 15 and 0. Jesus.
I just couldn't get close to him. I was too busy skirmishing with the guys in front of him.
Yes, the point. That's how front lines work. The guys guarding him are front lines.
Right.
They run through code lines in a leader, and they're able to get picks because the leader went 15 rounds.
Power control Manta. PC Manta.
Yes.
What do you guys want to change?
I need to hit shots.
You need to bait the leader so he's always watching you, not hit shots.
Okay.
You want to play in the exact range so that the leader's only focusing on you and we can make plays on the leader.
Alright.
If you can't kill the leader on a fair 1v1, it's not going to be fair.
I'm swapping the CDS.
For the chump,
On tower, are you sure?
it's to distract the leader's point. Yeah, it's tower as well. Yeah, that's good.
I'm thinking I switch S-Blast.
Do you have a different weapon?
Yes. mostly for tower AoE and a game special. And I also just like S-Blasts on this map. I feel really confident. If that's okay.
Yeah, here you go.
Okay.
Alright, we go.
Ooh, you're on brush. Exciting.
Yeah,
okay.
I know. It's funny as fuck. Main play? Shit, I should talk about that, it's fun. Where do you play, Ava? Right platform, left platform?
Right platform to start.
It's bunker or to left platform?
To bunker.
Okay, I'm with you. Ethan, cover, like, structure for Ava. For Kirb.
Yep.
One up here.
Make sure they're not on the flank. You're good.
E leader's looking at us.
Okay, leader's distracted. Go. Time up bunker.
He's not. Yeah, he's still looking at us.
Got one.
Your beacon's out, Ethan. Be careful.
Ow.
I traded.
Oh, I didn't mean to drop there. Shit. Don't jump. Don't jump.
Back up. I want to jump.
Okay. Now you're good.
I'm jumping in.
Leader's dead.
Oh, you guys are dead. Never mind. Nice.
One behind tower, left side. One on bunker. We want the bunker pit.
Dooley's on me.
I got one.
Hopping on tower.
Got it.
E leader's looking at me still.
Okay, distracted him. Go.
I'm dead.
Oh, how the fuck?
Dooley's behind you. Dooley's behind you.
Yeah, I know. Trade it out.
Okay.
That beacon's
Jump into
dead.
beak.
Don't take it. We go top right. That beacon's dead. Don't take it. We go top right.
On it.
Sucks. Okay. Good luck for people climbing on you. There's gonna be 3 there.
Top right. Motherfucker, I
You
traded.
just need the first
Sorry.
checkpoint into this leader. Got one. Grab tanks, weakened, half bomb.
Crab tank out.
Nothing. Leader's behind. Someone who's diving him. It's not me.
I can't dive him.
Julie's are flat. Once Julie's are dead, I can dive it.
Dooley's to Dooley's.
Ah, I'm dead.
One on you, Dino.
Yep. Traded. Right.
Dead to
platform.
Eater.
Playing. Come on. We're playing right platform. You're trying to prevent the climb up to the right platform.
E-leader's weak. Leader's
Yep,
dead.
leader's dead. Okay, we can try walking on these guys.
I'm out.
Got him.
Good
Oh,
Julie's.
tower's still what?
Traded out. Traded out. Last is on stack. Pop Zuka.
Zuka's-
We're on our like way defensive neutral still. Ava, what are you looking for? Their bunker or our bunker? I think they're on their bunker. You push it out. This guy on the floor here. With that.
Ah, traded.
E leader's looking at me.
Cool. Wait. Stall.
How did he hit that? Oh my god.
You don't want to stay still ever. You want to stay outside of his range.
I'm
Straight
set.
up. Use a
I'm
good
at our
leader.
bunker.
One on it. One behind on our sneaky. One behind our street. There he is. He's on the wall.
He's
Even
running
careful this wall.
I had to back up.
Yep, coming.
Take him off.
Come on,
Keep
got
chasing.
him.
Keep chasing. Keep chasing. Keep looking for.
Eater.
Got one.
E leader's falling back.
Leader gets picked off here. We can push this. Check one. I have check. You have shield. Kirb.
Ah, no.
Almost.
I died.
Nope, not anymore.
Eater got me.
Do you have a shield yet?
I'm dead.
That was just you.
God damn it.
I called it. I called it.
Sucks. Okay. I should have told the leader then. That's on me. I thought you guys had the leader on his pocket. Damn.
Two are flat.
Being leader. Sucks to do. Got one. Crab tank's dead.
What the fuck?
Player bunker group. I don't know why you're trying to cut bunker from like the awkwardest, like the hardest shot in the game to hit.
Ah, I
Let's
died,
see.
Zuka.
That's 3 for Zuka.
Ow! Okay. Ah, we're getting picked. I have no reason for that.
Julie's weak. Our
Yeah,
street. Our
I
street.
think you guys call street. 2 street. Turn back, Ethan.
Coming up.
On the wall. One on you.
Get up.
One on
I got one. Ah, Crabler. Crabler. Our bunker.
Yep. This game's losable and winnable. You just need one good offense. Which you have.
Hi, Booyah. Where do you want it?
What are we pushing? Late platform? Do you want late platform? Ethan goes late platform. Late.
I died.
Yep, we call where they're at. They were right platform. We wanted to play right platform. Ethan's going into the blue. Ethan did not realize that. Ethan was throwing the game for fun. Contest tower, please. Who is contesting tower, please? I had to trade out too. Like, where are you guys? Why are you guys pushing street from behind without telling me that's the goal?
Pushing from right?
Yeah, we're picked out. They're clean. Watch the jump.
I got 3.
Watch the jump. Cool, we're pushing up their bunker. Go immediate bunker.
Dead.
Cool, go bunker. Kirb, you have it. You have the Ava's block. Bunker, why are you in platform?
Oh, I thought this was bunker. Where's bunker?
No! Oh my, oh, this game. Let's talk about it.
One flanking, one on flat, one arm. It might be Kirb above you.
Yeah, crab tank.
Not 3, I did my job. Okay. I did my job. I don't know what you guys want from me. Good try. Let's do it. No? Okay.
Where's bunker? Where's bunker?
They're bunker. Okay, you know the thing where you start in the middle of the game? That's bunker. We go platform.
Oh.
Bunker or platform are the main outposts. Their leader likes taking platform, which is really bad because I could take him out like a couple times there. The problem was after we took out the leader would reset and either be on the top left snipe or be in street. We didn't collapse street fast enough. The leader set up, they set up, we lose tower. We could not get first checkpoint because we didn't decide where the leader was, and our team was always picking the wrong area. Like when the leader was on the snipe and I distracted, you just got insta-killed, which is on you completely. Dodge the leader snipe, I can't tell you what else to do. Like, I legit, like, I don't know what to tell you. And then we were attacking street. Wrong play because we want to attack the backline. The backline's the guy shooting at tower. Neither Ava or Ethan were in platform to kill the leader. I was. I can't do that, I'm a brush. I kill street really well. Otherwise, Kirb should have been on bunker immediately to take out the leader so the leader didn't do the thing the leader was doing earlier there. I got a triple in the end because they were feeding. Mechanically, I don't think they're good. Like, it's just the leader in my opinion that guy was told before. And even then, he doesn't know how to deal with things, so another shrug. Ethan, what are you? Like, you're not calling any of your plays. You're not calling that you're with any of our plays. You're not the reason why the team's losing. The reason why the team's losing is, like...
I was trying to set up beaks, but I'm also trying to pick off the leader because they're going right in the spots where I can get them.
If you dive
just
with
really
leaders,
So I'm trying to play
dive
off
with
your
leaders-
guys' plays where you call out, I want to do this. I'm trying to flank.
okay, if you
Because
dive
you
the
can
E-leader,
like the
let me
distraction.
speak. If you dive the E-leader, I never heard it. Also, I never saw special. We are not diving the E-leader because we're not mechanically better than him, which means we're shoving the E-leader. If you're diving him, you lose. Just straight up, like every single time I've seen anyone dive the leader, including myself. Like there was 2 times where I was successful and it was only with Brush, because Brush has a weird mechanic where I can. I don't even know if I just straight up don't think it's possible to CS unless the leader throws, but at that point the leader's not that good at the game, which he was good at the game. If you were diving him, you died. Which means we were down a player significantly. At that point I can see why you were 3 and 10, and I can maybe blame you for the game, but no, I have to blame myself. Because I miscalled a few things. Also, what is your plan on diving? After you kill him, like, most of the time he was on platform. You dive platform, you have to get a triple, like I did. I'm confident that you can probably get that triple, you're CDS. Were you? Like, as soon as you got the dive, were you ready to get double?
Most likely not.
Or was it just first plan just to kill the leader? Because if you're only thinking about killing the leader, you probably died there. Like, that's it. You just kill leader. Which is fine.
Yeah, I was...
So you're burning a lot of your tempo for the team. And into a leader who gets to, like, dominate any defensive, we need that tempo to push him. Chomps is really good at distracting that leader. I also picked a special to distract the leader. I was slightly too late every single time that Kirb, you called the leader was on you. I put special slightly too late. That's on me.
Mm.
Other thing, street. We need first checkpoint to climb up to the top left snipe, which means someone needs to go all the way around to their drop underneath their base, climb up the staircase, and go to the snipe. Ethan, if you were diving, did you know that's what you had to do?
No.
Then I don't think you were diving. Like straight, like we didn't talk about the stage in terms of position and shit, so like I'm not like complaining, but like you had to know that.
I know that I thought that was curl technically.
It is a girl, but otherwise you have to have a weapon like Ava who has a blaster who can just shoot the ledge. But that's a long dive. But because your weapon isn't that, you specifically would have to curl them, which is so inefficient on the stage. At that point, why are you setting up with Athens? Because then you're not in position to make plays. So like a lot of things were going on. Ava, let's target you now. What went wrong for you?
I was repeatedly saying that I was gonna play from plat, and I was definitely trying to play from plat. Fuck.
2 times that I saw that you were on plat, I put the thing up. You didn't go bunker. Like you just weren't in time with bunker. Straight up. Or okay, I should stop saying straight up because like one that's getting annoying in my own head. But like
yeah,
I did the thing. Was it set up fine? I just think I was too early and you were too late, and I can't tell if that was like you just didn't commit, so I was wrong, or if I was really, really bad at like setting it up for you. And I want to know. Do you think you could have been faster? This is the first question.
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest. I don't even remember when I was actually able to be in plat, because almost all the game for me was spent trying to figure out how to actually get out of snipe.
Okay, we lost there. That's like the entire game was lost as soon as the Udo locked that out. When you said you were gonna take platform, I assumed you had a trick in your book, or like you just knew how to get to platform. If you didn't, that's not where our play is, because that's not where you set up your strongest. When we talk about sets, it's where you play the strongest. You have to be better than the E-leader to set up on that platform, right? You have to be stronger than him. Knowing what we know now, where do you set up?
For neutral?
Yeah, because otherwise we don't have a play. Like if you weren't able to set up there was just straight up no play. So straight up, there was just literally no play. And like that's literally why we couldn't get it. It was like one special, 8. And mine was used mostly to stall a leader. Also, that sucks, Kirb. That one push that we could have like turned the game back, you just didn't have bubble shield. That hurts.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had it, and then I was so close, and then the E-leader collateraled me and Ethan, so there was nothing I could have done about that.
Okay, straight up, okay. That might have been Ethan's fault, because Ethan should have been up with me. Like, Ethan should have been on bunker, dropping on that leader.
Well, to be fair, I should have been behind tower building special instead of sitting on it like an idiot.
Fair.
Because the main issue for
things that went wrong in that, like, 2 seconds.
The main issue for me in that match was me getting hit by E-leader, like a lot. I was just bad positioning, I was missing shots, and I couldn't get him to look at me as much as I wanted him to.
Fair. And he knows he doesn't need to look at you. That like he was smart enough to realize that. Ava, you?
All that said and done, I think my set is still snipe, because...
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
Because part of the reason that they weren't able to push was because I was able to backpedal and just flash them off of tower real quick before I went back to trying to fucking figure out how to get back on the plat.
Hey Ava, you know the thing where you guard tower?
He's like, hi, I'm a yellow bunny.
Are you midline? Why are we making it your job to guard tower?
Because I'm the only person with an AoE weapon.
No, I guarded tower more than you. Like, I got more picks. I got triples on tower. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you actually got your doubles. Like, we took our turns, right? I can do it because I'm support. I get to spread my, like, I get to switch roles. We didn't get a single offense because you were playing as a backline.
Yeah.
You didn't commit to your role. I think setting up snipe is where a backline wants to be.
Okay.
I think you're fine. If you wanted to anchor that game, all it then. Say, I'm playing S-Blast with intent to anchor. Switch Kirb off of something, we put our sub in, because, like, I don't know if Kirb wants to switch something. And then, like, Ethan is the midline. I like, that's, if that's gonna be what it's gonna be, then it's gonna be what it's gonna be, right? Like, okay. That's fine. I think Street would be better. Because Street is where you cover the flank, you can win that 1v1 because you're Blaster. And you can cover by climbing up the wall of Street. And then when you win Bunker, you can collapse the back line. Because if the leader's either in Bunker, you kill them there. Or if he's behind Bunker, then he's not helping Tower and you did your job.
Yeah, you're right.
It was Kirb that was attacking Bunker, which is the hardest snipe in the game. I said that mid-game, Kirb.
Yeah, I heard you.
And it was you covering the anchor. Really funny to me. Because I knew, like, the position was fucked. And I don't know what you guys need from me. For me to help.
I need to communicate more.
Oh, for sure. Like, Ethan, you have to tell me you're down. Like, I'm fine with you down. Like, I believe you'll do it. But, like, I did not hear a single time when you had the leader. Or attention. Like, calling a leader attention is really, like, heavy too. Like, if the leader's looking at you, call leaders looking at you so somebody can make the play. We have a match yet? I'm curious.
No.
Alright, still talking. Kirb, this is literally your weapon gets outpicked. Alright?
Yeah.
This is, like, I'm fine with you running Spiffer because you're really good at it, but there's, like, this situation. Spiffer ain't cutting it, you know?
Yeah. No, I understand.
Think about your options, because I don't know what to tell you. Like, my recommendation's E-Liter, like, counter the E-Liter by being a better E-Liter. But also, if your E-Liter isn't your weapon, this is when I would sub you out. Like,
Yeah.
I would take the 5th player, yeah.
Which I totally understand.
Anchoring, we were doing something.
Yeah, no, I would have made the same play, but the thing is, like, that E-Leader was, like, they have a reputation for being, like, a god E-Leader.
Oh, cool.
So, that wasn't really our fault, that was them just being better at the game, entirely.
You know, I've seen leaders.
Okay,
better
Kirb,
than him,
they are
and I
better at
still
the
want
game, but your specific matchup, when you're sort of filling in, like, a little bit of that anchor role,
No, yeah, I know, I understand. I'm just not good enough with E-Leader to do that. Like, that in that situation, I would sub out.
That guy's just straight up built different. Like, he went 15-0. I need you, like, that guy's good at the game. I've seen other god dealers that I would argue have been better than him, but yeah, that guy is, like, top cut dealer. Like, that is probably top 5 cut.
okay. So Kirb, if that's not a winnable matchup,
then, like I said, I would swap Kirb out. If Kirb doesn't want, like, if he's an OTP, like, one-trick player Swiffer, that's when I would have a 5th player play the game.
Yep.
That's when I would pull, like, PB, that's when I would pull our sub. And that's fine. Like, we didn't have that today. I'm fine with dropping those games and saying, got clapped by E-Leader, move next, because that's just how E-Leader works.
yeah.
Mechanically, that's why I said, okay, we've dropped the game, bad for us. Talk about mechanics. What could have been right? Because was there fights that were winnable? Because those are the things that we can improve on at the current moment. Can't really improve on changing out an entire new player. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
So mechanically, what were the fights that you guys lost and won? But I did really bad on Museum. Like, I was throwing that for you guys. Sorry about that.
I kept getting 2v1s.
Or you're saying you got outnumbered?
Because I'm diving. So
Yes. When you're diving, you're expecting to play into multiple. You're specifically picking a target because that's the person you can kill, and then you in a 1v1 you want to win that. Shrug, don't know what to tell you.
So for Museum, I felt I was really just losing to the E-Leader over and over and over
E-Leader
again.
has such a big dominance on Museum. It's funny. Dude, that guy, 15-0. That guy's clean. And when I say there's better E-Leaders, because like I think he could have pushed up. I think he was scared to push up for some reason. If he pushed up and like maintained that like sniping everybody, they just knock out. Like way earlier than that. I mean, like in the first push they knocked out.
we got a match.
We had them on neutral for longer than I think they should have been. Oh, we had a match? Okay. I think we did really well holding them in neutral. Either they win it anyways. We did fine. Like, there were some good doubles that let us in, but that wasn't consistent enough to rely on. That was just like, oh, they got picked out, we can make a play. With numbers instead of specials. Which is fun. Like, that's good.
Match is
It
up.
just tells us getting out mechanic is getting out mechanic. Who has room and what's happening? I don't know.
We're against Inkia, Day Shift, they're 1 seed below us. So, theoretically, we win this shit.
Theoretically. I don't know who am I joining. I don't. Also, if you can find the rounds again.
Yep, working on it. Round 4, Rainmaker on Undertow.
Hurricane Matthew.
What?
The meme sent in chat that they gave us.
Oh.
Why does this picture of Dream look like Hurricane Matthew?
Kirb, what's first map mode?
It is Rainmaker on Undertow.
Do we have an Undertow?
Undertow, fuck. Go left every time unless you got a clean right, like a wipeout. Sometimes stall up.
I think that's
I don't
a bad
think
idea.
we have a main. I think it is lowing. I don't know. Well, we're kind of already holding on. What do you want us to do? True, but we're built different.
Me resisting the urge to say don't be difficult in chat.
Yo, tight, because I feel like if I say something, the mod's gonna come and clap.
Yeah, bro. I can't believe that E-Leader wasn't LI banned. He's gotta be. Like, he has a reputation.
Well, I can't believe I'm not like that.
That's true, that's true.
Like,
Which
to
means
be
that-
completely fair, I played Brush for the first time in like a bit. Out of nowhere, outfragged all of you, and tripled the leader a couple times diving in.
Huh.
I'm different too. Not different enough to anchor with the E-Leader in clap games. I actually know what the best play for me was also going E-Leader and seeing what's happening. My bad. Oopsie doopsie. I think in the last game I shouldn't have picked Brush. I should have picked Leader.
That would have been really silly, honestly.
That would have been funny. Type sorry about that. Like,
It's all good. We still won a game, and that's what matters. There was still a higher seed than us.
not really. Again, I'm not
These guys we should be able to clap though.
Well, again, I'm not
DS
expecting to win. I expect us to like take these lessons of like, yeah, it's just a few mechanical stuff. Their leader's just better. Yeah, there's a play, like we need to learn this stage. Sure. Clan Blitz is like its own category, so I'm not really worried about those Clan Blitzes. But like, I'm scared if that's our Clan Blitz. Rainmaker is also pretty funny. What am I feeling on Undertale? I'm feeling...
I'm gonna be on stamp, probably.
And I can't wait till I have to wear the tag where I have to put MTU in front of everything. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be awesome.
Can't wait to be 0-22 for the first time in my life. I think the most times I've died in a game is 30, and that's because you're trying to kill me 30 times in the game.
I'm running VDS.
Is this, call with the kicks, I honestly don't know.
Wave bomb.
Yeah.
And wave bomber.
I don't think beats are
It's
chumps.
Rainmaker,
good.
right?
Yeah, Rainmaker toe.
Didn't we do this one already?
No.
No, not Undertow. Never mind. Sorry.
Contract.
I was thinking of
Alright, good
Scorch. I was thinking of Scorch.
Oh wait, shit, we gotta talk about our plays. Ah, okay. Stay on
What's
top of
that?
the play, what are we doing? Kirb, go top left with me.
Yeah.
I was gonna.
You guys
I was
aren't
gonna,
really looking to dive unless they're not there. Like, if they can't guard that street, go across it. But I expect them to be able to guard the street, really build special. And I would say build it on Ava, because Ava's not gonna win.
I'm gonna set spine looking to go left after pop.
I'll go right. One on me, they know.
Edit's
Two on
looking at me.
There's two right,
There's-
Ava, go right.
One on the dead.
One on me.
Edit's looking at me.
Yep,
He's down by you, Dino.
Yep, he's out. You pushed me like you said.
Ava, why did you jump? I didn't
know
say
he- I didn't know you were fighting. My bad.
He called that he was fighting, we couldn't respond to him. Ava, you need to be on the right side. You going left is kind of...
Yeah.
Like, that was like, I don't know. I'm sure they were there.
That's on.
Gluga's on right.
You can go pick.
Gluga's Pabuya. Watch out.
Glue on the right.
March, Gluga. Watch out, Ava. Okay,
Glue on me still, need help on him.
got you.
I'm on their spine. I died. Shot
I'm out
on
of ink.
spine.
Got him.
Nice.
Cover front.
I'm fucking out. Damn it. I'm out.
He's gonna be a time up the wall.
I'm on our spine. Set.
Diving. Got one.
On you.
Down. One more.
Holy shit, I'm bad.
They have the bunker in. They have set up on the bunker. We're two
Got
up,
two.
we're two up. Call it, move it. Call it, move
Where?
it.
Where?
Yeah,
Gluga's
call
on me.
Got one.
Dead. I died the wall somehow.
Go left, hard left.
I'm painting up to plat. Cool. There's a route
Hard
painted.
left next time, Ethan, you can get picked off really easy here.
About to get picked up.
I'm
Down, down,
diving
Got two.
because I'm a gamer.
Two out. We have top,
Top,
Move up. Kill them at the top. Kill them.
I'm out. Fuck.
I'm risking a jump.
Can I jump, Kirb? Can I jump?
No.
Jump to me. Fuck it.
I'm in.
Gluga's weak.
One behind.
Very weak.
Ethan, if I say don't jump, don't jump.
Reset.
You just got lucky there. I couldn't guarantee your safety. Have you had it going on grates?
Reset back to mid. Next time when they're popping like that, you kill them not to pop. Ever. Always.
Got
I
you.
will
I
have
got
control
it.
of pop. If they go for pop, they're wrong because they would die. I'm gonna pop this. Top right, can we isolate top right?
Try Zuka. God damn it. I should have.
Ethan, we
got
need to
one
help
top
this right
right.
guy.
Have you had it? I'm gonna have it.
Ava's crazy at skirmishing. What the? You're still skirmishing. What the?
Yep.
Be careful.
I finally
I'm on the
died.
left side.
Sorry.
Fuck, I died.
Yeah, we're just.
I'm resetting outpost.
That should not have happened. You guys skirmished for no reason. There was nothing to be done. Like we can't push Rainmaker. We need you guys to come back to the front. Left side street.
2 left side.
Oh, we're gonna put
You got
it left street's open. Okay.
Two on me. I'm out. Shit.
Got one.
That's weak.
I'm dead to try again.
Oh.
Get the try it out. We're dead. Go.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
see where they go.
They're going left.
Cool. Careful. Watch Booyah.
Watch your spine.
They're weak.
Good.
They popped. Don't let them grab it.
I got one.
Leads nothing.
Leads
Hard
nothing.
left.
We push left. We
Ethan,
push
pop.
left.
Your take.
Heavy headed dead. Got one.
I'm out.
You're good. Down.
I'm up to left.
Behind Ethan. Two behind Ethan.
Got one.
Cool.
So many
Nice.
One on top. I need help.
Watch Glugos. I need help on Glugos.
Dang.
I'm out.
Where's the bucket?
The bucket's down.
Rocks.
Okay, well, you're gonna be
Just
down.
I'm dead.
I need to help on the Glugos.
We get one more push. We need one more push. It's fine. We win the neutral here. Set up our neutrals.
I overextended. I don't know why I did that.
Set.
Two right street. Need help on right street. Get two down it. They're on right bunker. Right bunker. They already have a path for Rainmaker built here.
Got one.
Got rain.
Get up on Google.
One on grass. Got him.
Coming.
Pop it.
Google's dead. 3 out.
Should I take?
Ethan take. Go left.
Got it.
Oh fuck.
Herb, whatever.
I didn't mean to.
Oh.
I got it.
And it's on grass.
Good move forward. Okay, I'll clean the forward.
Got two.
I've zipped.
Forward clean. Up to me.
Zipping.
Up to me.
One next. Shit.
There's one on grates. There's one on grates.
Bomb. You need pop.
Got him.
Pop.
Jump to me.
Pick up and walk.
I'm throwing down right. Let me pick up.
You need to lead. Pick it up and walk in.
And it's dead.
Keep pushing.
Got one.
I'm out.
It's not.
Okay, we're playing with this lead, so we're gonna reset.
Down the bump.
We're gonna
Jump the bubble. Everything's bubble.
Ethan, we're resetting. Or sorry.
Okay, my fault. I didn't jump it.
They need to lead a 14. Cool. We have mid. We have our neutral kind of. Right side street. Careful.
Yep.
I'm charging
This
left
stuff
street.
is good. Let's see if we can get on return. What do we have on return? I have cooler right side. Put it down.
I'm out.
Got him.
Good trade. Cool. Good reset. Good push. That was a great lead with 14. I don't know how you guys got that.
They weren't looking at me.
Good.
Ha ha ha. Look at me exercising good decision making skills to shard. Ha 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 ha.
Kirb, I'm just gonna say this. Don't you ever pick up my fucking Rainmaker.
I didn't mean to, bro. I'm sorry.
Kirb, jump off the map. IRL, find the edge of the earth and jump off. You gotta drop
Unless
your
you're-
needs it.
No, that was kind of funny. I was like, why the fuck don't I have the Rainmaker right now? But then I was like, oh.
Kirb, what's next map mode?
Rainmaker, Manta. Wait,
In that
shit.
one-
Fucking
Yeah.
Rainmaker, Jesus.
Wait, hold on. What round is this?
4?
It's round 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I highlighted the wrong one. Sorry. Splat Zone's on Robo Ramen. Rainmaker and Undertow is still good.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Because like
In
I
that
clicked
situation,
off.
You don't have take. You take Kirb's role of walking up forward. I should be guarding. You just like you call who's behind. If you just have to guard behind, you guard behind. But you're pushing forward. You're doing the one.
Flat zones.
Dude, this is such a good stage to not play Enzap, but I'm playing Enzap.
Should I be chump?
Based.
I don't have a charger. I would do Wavebreaker. Wavebreaker's pretty solid.
Rainmaker then.
Whoever's the
I...
Splatana, props because you play well.
Oh, actually, for this map, I'm thinking S-Blast. If that's okay.
They know who you are. They recognize that you can skirmish. They're probably going to commit more than one person whenever they fight you, which
Okay.
is really good for us. You just got to tell us when you're in a fight so that we can help you.
Okay.
But now they're no longer like gonna get isolated, or at least they should be kind of aware that they shouldn't get isolated.
Okay.
Whee! So where are you going? Staircase? Or ladder?
What's the left side fucking called?
Oh, well, there's a ladder. There's a snake. There's a snake head. There's a snake tail. There's also grates and glass.
Which side is the head?
The head is on our own side, so our side has a head. Going left, go to theirs, goes tails. So underneath
Okay.
their, like the thing that goes underneath his tail.
Okay.
Head is like the thing that leads out to the ladder.
So for Blaster, it's strong for me to set next to tail with.
So our team's ladder.
I want to end up on zone. If you guys are fighting from
Go
like
left to the
direct-
ladder, those like 3 staircases, and play there.
Okay.
If that's what you're saying. That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
Kirb,
Stay
go
calm.
hard right, like look right side of zone, pillow, like go to the glass all the way.
Yep.
Glass.
Yep. The
Go
bomb
glass.
right here is on table. That bomb. That
Okay.
table will be really important. Look right side of this pillow. Keep looking right side, Kirb.
Yep.
Because they're dead.
Pushing through. We're pushing.
Got
Go
one.
up. Go up.
Okay, they
Pushing.
gave up.
You have table. Kirb to us.
I'm on table. I'm on table. You can jump. You can
Wait,
jump.
DC. They had DC. Okay.
Wait, what?
They had a DC.
Okay.
Like there was a guy who was glitching out in base. So we did fine. We take their table. Kirb pulls into us. Make
Yep.
sure Kirb zone was fine. I didn't check zone. Sorry.
Okay.
And then we lock out there. That's kind of where we lock out. Kirb, you can also take the bunker. Their bunker is also fine. Which is on the other side. Also, we got 2, 2, 2, and 0. We absolutely cleaned them. What did they say?
They got
they're having VC issues.
Just use Discord, bro.
So this is a really dirty tactic, but usually they queue in, say there's a DC, and then check our weapons. We're not switching. I think it's against the rules to switch. In my opinion, it should be. If it's not,
It is against the rules, yeah. And they can't switch either, so.
Yeah, that's what I said. Do you guys remember their weapons?
V-shot,
Edit.
V-shot, Glutos, edit, and what was the last?
I didn't see the last
Stalker?
one.
Stalker?
Wait, we literally, wait, guys, it's literally fucking there. So there's no contest.
Yeah, okay, we're good. Yeah.
Edit and
Make sure we have an eye on that.
okay.
Um,
They all had stealth jump, by the way. I love
Dino.
I'll jump always. Yeah, what's up?
You saw where I started, right? Is that stairs?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
And you're trying to peek over the glass where your boss is. Throw bomb
Yes.
over well, because that would also help.
Yes. The thing that's handy about that position is that I can poke both over the glass and also behind the glass.
Correct. Which is what I thought you were going to do.
Yes.
Ethan, you came from a good angle. Make sure you clear out their ladder. I'm going to come to you if they're fighting ladder.
Alright. Was it okay that I was
Very
standing on the table there? Or because I was waiting for Kirb to take back
Personally,
that.
if I was your weapon, I'd be sharking. Does not matter what you do, you're just locking.
Okay.
You just lock them, make sure they can't get past you. Other things, you might want to look hard right. Make sure they don't run to basement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But just like, stop them where they like. If they drop, they should be dead. You should be on top of that. You should be underneath them, if anything. Kirb is purposely peeking because Kirb has, in quote, range to do so, but Kirb is really just threatening that there's a charger.
Same plays, same opening.
Yep. They should expect it, but also, because they're expecting it, it works more because they're scared. Unless they play delay. Their best decision is to not respond to us. In which case, I'm gonna be very helping. That means Ava can take over this thing. Or this platform.
Okay, I'm here.
Table. Three table.
one.
Table. One.
I got one.
Kirb,
One on
push
bottom.
right side.
Two on bottom, two on bottom.
That one.
Sorry,
Okay.
I was not there, I was not there.
Watch the table underneath it, underneath it.
Edit's weak. Oh. There's one more. There's one more on stairs.
I see him.
I see him.
I should have called that they were on us.
Got edit.
Are they down? Are Gluga's down? Are Gluga's down?
Yes, yes, I marked them. I marked them. Two down there. Two down there.
Got one.
That one. Correct.
Their edit is also down there.
No, their edit's up here.
Cooler's up ahead, try to get.
Got it. Where?
Watch your tail, one our
Edit down by you.
Shit, I'm out, sorry.
One our table,
I'm flanking.
one our ladder.
Going with you,
We
Don.
got one.
Two there. Both marked.
I don't know how I'm alive right now.
Red zone.
They have cooler. There are two down there.
Go top. Go to it. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep pushing through there. Make sure they don't respawn. You're fighting those guys. That's your fight.
Yep.
Win those.
What the fuck? Hey,
Gluga's on me.
One their stairs. One their stairs.
They're gonna pop Booyah.
Oh, shit. Sorry, I'm out.
I'm gonna die here. Yeah, I'm out.
Yep. Respawns to me. They're gonna have this position where the cooler is. Ready up to me. I'm holding. Okay, we're gonna play from here. We want something. One up.
Shit. Fuck. Didn't see him, sorry.
That one. Yep. Two up. Go three up. There.
Got Gluga's.
Got two.
I'm
Heavy's backing
dropping
out.
down to our stairs.
One in zone. Right side. Kill him.
Moving up.
Got him.
Another zone.
Edit dead.
Edit down. Cool.
One on my house, one on my house. There's a jumper.
Yep.
They're behind block, they're behind block.
I'm
They're
off
still
your
there.
table.
One on me still. Nice.
Stay in front with me, please, guys.
Slosher up there.
One up on this.
You have a cooler on left side, please.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Got Slosher.
Three out.
Or edit, sorry.
Is that the respawn's done? All if they go
Marked
back,
one.
guys on that.
Uh-oh. I'm dead. But I died with cooler.
Gluga's down here. Gluga's down here.
Cool. Move
Marked him.
Down there, basement, by the way. That's what I need to call for.
I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead to Gluga's. They're marked.
Basement,
They have Booyah. They have Booyah.
Take this guy out and then turn back to mid. Turn back to mid.
I got one on stairs. I booyah.
Call Booyah so I can
Booyah,
put the button. I
Yeah, that's-
That was We're two up, two even, but us just left.
Yep.
They're going to snake. Never mind.
They're three out. They're three in.
Got
Cooler.
one.
In our thing.
Got edit. I'm pushing up. Got another.
Going
Ah!
with third. They're three out. Last.
Oh god.
Nice.
I'm fucking
Move it.
goated.
Lock them. Three right side. Watch for basement.
Got him.
Two on third. Two top
watching
left.
top
They're
left.
attic.
Throwing down wave.
Yeah, one drop. The end
I
door.
booyah.
I'm out. Shit. Got him.
Watch your Booyah. They have a
Booyah.
table there for basement. One
Can I jump to? Who can I jump?
Oh, I died. I died.
This way.
One here.
Got one. Watch out for bomb.
Cooler left side zone. One in zone. I have no idea.
Hey. Hey, Squipper.
I got one. Oh,
Got one. Last.
Got one. Oh, fucking bad.
Last
Nice. Oh shit, zone.
You guys, it's fine. I turn back. Go forward.
Moving up.
That's game. Nice.
Thank you.
We won in one.
gaming.
We still play one more, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's wait, why isn't the score reported? Did we win 2 before? Or 1? Is this the first? I'm fucking stupid right now.
I already reported it.
We're not reporting for this set yet.
Captain is good at
I'm just fast.
Our next game is Clams on Barnacle.
Delicious.
22 and 3.
Clams.
Was cooler helpful? I can't tell.
It was very helpful.
Those coolers were great. I'm gonna be honest. Those coolers were great. I was able to get in there. Their glueless wasn't doing shit. I'm gonna be honest. Like
Right, cool.
they thought they were him. They were not.
I kind of like that map.
Quad though, what the hell?
Huh?
Out here with the quad.
Yeah.
Barnacle and dime! I wanna run it down. Can I run it down?
Slime blitz stage. Do we want jump or wave?
Sure. Answer's yes.
Oh
Do they have a charger? No. That's my requirement. Do they have a charger? No.
Answer is
All right.
Trump.
Jump. They got edit. We sure.
Yeah, but he's not a charger.
All right, fair.
The charger is if he had a charger, I could be wrong.
No, heavy edit is no.
Okay, then I don't give a fuck. Like what?
Jump. Heavies are just good
What mode
against
is
jump.
it?
That's why. Clam.
Oh, it's Clamley. Ah. 9-bits hider right here. Oh, I need a lethal bomb.
I need to set up jumps for us there. All right.
Boobies.
Jump peak. I'm set up.
For clams, do I still want to open our streak?
Do you?
Or should I delay? You know,
I don't know.
I think for clams, I don't immediately go straight.
Which one's Barnacle and Dime? I forgot.
This one.
Amnesia. Yeah, this one.
Oh, great. Let's go with their street right now. Like, they're not the street closest to us, but far street. Let's go.
Their street. All three of us.
Okay,
all four?
fuck it.
No, I mean, mostly me and Ava, but you guys can go and come with if you can.
All right. I'll just set up peaks.
Oh man, I'm rusty with this thing. This thing's actually just crazy.
I'm going up.
I tried to glutes.
One underneath.
Oh my god. Behind you, Ethan? Behind you?
Yeah, no.
Help Dino, help Dino, help Dino. You're gonna get picked off, you're gonna get picked off.
No, I'm not. Stop fucking doubting me. I don't believe in this fucking blue.
Stop being a hater. Stop being a hater.
Got one. Got two.
Heavy. 2 out.
Edit down.
Got three.
$1.
Got four. No, just kidding. Ha!
Oh.
I thought I hit that shot. Last is Slosher. They're all respawns.
Throw it backwards now. Cool. You get a pick. Ethan, you go right street with me?
I'm out. Dead.
Even though.
Sorry.
Okay, I need someone right street on me.
I got you.
In my back.
They're flat. I got their glutes.
Here we go.
Ava, you throw.
I'm up.
Throw the clam.
Edit's weak. Edit's down.
Oh my god, what am I doing? I should have been charging bubble.
Oh, I missed.
Top left, need help.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Cool. I'm zipping. I'm helping.
There's clams still in there.
I'm dead.
We have a
Never mind. No. Don't go in. Don't go in. Jump to you though.
That's why. Oh my god, that didn't
Uh-oh.
look at my screen. That guy's cheated.
That guy's cheating. Fuck that. That's so.
died.
That's on me. I didn't know that was a thing.
I traded.
My bad.
Why did I do that?
That just was an illegal play in my book, but. 2 platform, we clearing up, you guys. Need help. They booyah me for no reason. They booyah me for no reason. You guys isolate them. They're gonna have a higher lead than us.
30. They're gonna
Got one.
First ball underneath, need help on the side.
Coming.
I got an edit.
Jumper on me.
Oh, I got glucose. Oh, I got another one. Oh.
thank you.
Scores. What
What a game.
We take mid. I'm on their plat.
Cool, we're
I'm on
on
their
the plat.
plat.
We're off the plat.
I'm
You were
dead.
late. We lost plat because you were late. Great. Take back ours.
I'm up.
Left street.
Who was late? Me?
Kirb.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. Kirb,
What was
you
that?
think keep pushing through this? Don't leave my ink back room. Fuck.
Sorry.
Down at Google Street.
Got him. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, weak shot.
Kirby,
Shot our
you're
plan.
Go back,
Shot
go
our
back,
plan.
go back.
Reset.
So good.
Yep.
Got one.
Sorry.
Got one. Another. Hey, Google's last. Google's last. Google's last.
Oh, the ball was there. Yes.
They're jumping in.
We just killed him then.
So the correct answer was what?
B shot still.
Shoot.
B shot got
Oh my god. That's embarrassing.
What? Take their plat.
Okay.
Go.
Who's building?
I'm on their plat. I'm on their plat.
Me.
I'm up here.
I died to Glooks.
How much do you
I
have?
died.
Oh. Got one.
I also died to Gloogs.
On me. On me, on me. When you respawn on me.
Got one.
Got a ball.
That is weak.
Thought that was the Pluto, sorry.
Dropping right on me.
Come to you guys.
I'm zipping like a fucking madman. Oh, oops.
Got one. Glooks on me.
Right side. 2-2 even. Good break. We do
I'm dead to Glooks.
Yeah, I thought we had loot. Okay. Can we get another power?
Oh, shit.
Fine, we build another power and we knock out.
Ah, oopsies.
Winnable game, losable game. Stay on top of it. Got one. 1-2 street, 2 street, 2 street. Need help on this.
Okay.
Got one.
Hold on me, please. We're
I'm
two
here.
on. One
Here
respawn.
to help.
Right street, they're guarding hard. I need clans. Don't pick up clans in middle because that's how I build power. I have the power. Great. We're covering through left on upper. Ethan.
Glugas are still there.
Yep, I just snipe. I you go too hard.
Oops. Oops.
Find a drop.
That's game.
We don't have enough for a ball.
What went wrong? Kirb need to be on the platform. I didn't see the jumper. Ethan missed the fight. Let's see. Street was wacky. How did we lose Street? What happened there? We had to be strong.
Our street? Well.
Their street. No, always their street.
Oh,
Technically our street because we own it.
yes. So what happened was, they started zuking our street, and they had people.
Oh, okay. We got out special done. Cool.
And so when they did that, I rotated a little bit more towards their plat, and I got a pick. But then I died.
No, you're good.
The 120. That's cool.
Why is it always the CDS?
What? What'd I do?
Like you're capable of like wiping out games, and then you go 7-11. It's funny. It's also fine because that game was not a game we wanted to win.
Yeah. So another problem with that game is that at this point I no longer perceive them as a threat. I was kind of just gaming.
Yeah, it was an
No,
ego.
losing's always an option. I wanted to lose that game to see what happens. That's why we're gonna go back and review it.
Yep.
Maybe, hopefully. Also, I don't think we want a single Columbus today, so.
They say compliments to the Squiff and Splatana.
Let's go.
Cool. Yeah, I'm rusty with this thing. What the fuck?
Is it sportsmanlike to say that their gloogs were silly? Me likey.
Yeah, sportsmanlike.
You're gonna get.
That's
You're gonna get
Splatoon right
banned.
Okay.
No, that's Splatoon. I have the ego to press that. You might not. I would do it because I feel like I don't think that's insulting.
To be fair, I asked you after I already texted them that.
Oh, the good. Thank you.
Yeah.
My opinion was never an opinion.
It was reflective, not preemptive.
Good. Always ask for forgiveness, never ask for permission. And that's why I went to jail back in 22. Also, Ava, are you missing fights or something? Like, what's going on?
Me?
Yeah.
Missing fights. So that game, I ended up trading a lot more than I usually do.
When you went
Because
17-11, what do you, like, you just got more triples this game? Is that what happened?
oh,
Confused. What did you do?
I don't know what you're asking me. I was just
like, what
killing
did
him.
you, like, what was your mechanical mistake? Like, you didn't go 20 kills. That's the problem.
Oh, my mechanical mistake was that
With a bomb?
So sorry, I'm distracted because they also they sent us a little ping on the Discord to say compliments to us. I'm sorry, I have split attention.
Sorry.
But yeah,
Those guys are a little bit silly. They're here for fun. They're here to have fun.
yeah. I'm glad that they're here for fun because they mean that I get to get clips out of this tournament.
I don't think I've gotten a fucking single
We have
clip.
match. What? You mean you don't clip every 24 seconds?
Nope. That was I'll be honest, the only clip I've ever made was that actual Jack kills. That was the only clip I've ever done.
Oh, okay, Dino, I think I have your answer. After that last game, or, well, after the previous two games, I realized if I go in, I can kind of just kill them all sometimes. And,
Yeah,
you know,
no, for sure.
they adapted to it a little bit. And as a result,
for sure.
my decision making, you know, maybe was a little bit suboptimal for some of them.
Okay.
So
There are
that's why I
times
didn't
that
go 20K.
You should just notice getting behind them is why did they let you get behind them, L? And then there's sometimes where it's like I could do it, but now they're aware
Round
of it,
5 is
it's not
ready.
gonna work. Getting enough of those games in to have that sense makes sense. Because as much as I should be going in all the time because I can just outplay everybody, I don't.
Nova Nightshade. C21.
Also, that sucked. I like completely think the blitz was messed up. Not because of me, but because Ethan wasn't where I thought Ethan was going to be, but it's fine. I also didn't tell Ethan where to go. Like, I was like fully expecting like a cross kind of play there. That would be funny as fuck. Also, I think you died immediately.
He's dead.
What? You are.
Sorry. I'm doing captain stuff. I'm the captain. I look at the
Look at me.
fly page.
I'm the captain.
I'm the captain.
I'm also looking at the Battlefy page.
Stalking it.
Why are we in a different one?
I don't know. Like, Ava's switched already.
Okay.
Go back to the friendly town. It's fine. Like,
We'll
it's
do it
fun
for
that
we'll do it for
Ava
round
switched
6.
And us to stay. Because that's what I think the other guys are going to.
Instead of defending it, I just said, yep, we're in a different one. It's complicated.
What are the Chinese things for like the pool name?
We're supposed to be low ink C.
Well, why are we LI?
I think we're gaming.
It's because round 2, another team had us switch over into the LI one to play with them, and we never left afterwards.
Oh.
Well, specifically, yeah. Which is valid because I wouldn't want to switch ever. I don't want to go back to sleep.
It's tactical, so they can't see our weapons curve.
True.
Now they won't.
run
Now they
forward
can't
to the
build up. They'll think that we only got a Splatana and a Charger.
Me. Who am I looking for? Me. Oh, what's the rounds? I don't know.
Let me see. We have Tower on Mako.
Makomar again?
Yep.
Yeah.
I could try to do some interesting plays.
Like winning. It's a pretty interesting play in my opinion.
I was meaning offensive plays where I hop on the glass for funsies and then I just camp on their
doesn't
snipe.
have a glass? No, I'm confused.
No, the glass slick. That part?
Itch, I need you to look at the map and then look me straight in the eye and still say the words you're saying.
It's glass. It's made out of glass. I don't know what to tell you.
This guy's out here going to a place that doesn't exist. No, let's play after the place that doesn't exist.
Oh, am I? Oh, it's Mako. Oh, I'm sorry. My fault.
Oh my lord.
Man's on a different stage.
I was on a different stage.
Out here on the parakeet or the carrot sport board. Man, trip.
Don't you guys know your cages in Mako Mart? Come the fuck on.
You guys don't know where the table is? You gotta throw it.
You don't know where Snake is?
Brother has no idea where the stage 2 ladder is. Man is playing from cancer.
You guys don't even know where Attic is.
My man.
Even though there is an
not.
attic on the stage.
There's an attic in Markham. My man's in the garage.
National Spampton.
Go to the
That's
thing.
good, though. What do we do?
Waiting for their second member.
Oh, the correct answer in my book, like what I was listening for, was running it down. Always a good answer.
Sets, I guess, for tower.
Call it, Ava.
Left stack.
Cool. Kirb has his.
Shit. Probably. Is it our plat that's, you know, raised section on the right side?
Our plat's on the left.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. No,
it's
that's
the
bunker.
start.
No. Tower's right side, which means when you respawn, you drop into like drop or basement, and then you're on snipe. Or sorry, yeah, snipe and or bunker. And then it's left stack, right street, pillow, right pillow, bar left pillow, and middle. So we're going left stack, right, Kirb?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
So I would do the same thing you did earlier, where you go right, like right pillow, kind of, and then blitz their stack, and then have Ethan climb, like be in the front, and then have Ava climb.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say, but I was like,
Words.
isn't
Ethan, if they drop off the top, you follow it. If they're on the right, Ava needs to let you know so you can drop right to pick them off. If they drop middle, you can chase it middle. Okay. Your best look, Ethan, is keep going through middle, looking like left of it, and then still looking on top of it if they're still there. Your worst play is getting sniped because they have a sniper on snipe. That's good because they're not looking at me and I can kill the guy diving.
Let's do this.
If you're getting killed across the map, it's because I'm fucking something up, or because we're calling you king. Good on our
Like,
play.
later.
Setting
Yeah,
neutrals
fuck
with bunker snipe. Like, don't go to the stacks immediately unless we have it. And be very careful with
They do
stacks.
not.
That's how we die.
Stamper
They don't have
tried
any
2
bad
shots.
Watch this stamp here.
Going with you, Ava.
Wahoo.
Stamp is here. Stamp's underneath. 2 underneath. No rushing.
Oop. Had to back up.
One behind tower. Got one straight out.
One my ouch. Weak, right side.
Got one.
Kirb lost.
We lost.
Got one.
Kirb one more. Kirb, there's one more on left stack. There's one on tower. 1,
Zuka.
There's one on tower.
3, down to it. Left side
Being
tower, 2
sneaky.
left side tower, 1 right side tower, 1 left side tower, 1 tower, 1 right side.
I got 2.
The last street, alright.
Mark the shot. Mark the shot. He's weak. He's weak. Nice.
Clean, last is left stack, he might have special.
Ooh.
He's still last year.
Yep.
He's weak.
Still there.
I'm coming up. I'm coming up.
He's still there. He's still there behind.
Got one.
Drop down,
He jumped
we're
out.
good.
Jumped out.
Kirb left stack, please.
Yep.
Wait, breaker.
We're contesting right stack, white.
I'm gonna die. Fucking try. I'm out. I'm out. One in mid. One near the
Stamper on you, Dino.
Wait, Ava.
Fuck.
Fuck.
I'm dead.
I'm dead.
Okay, reset, defense again. We care about second checkpoint, losing that one might actually be detrimental. Set up snipe.
Okay.
One behind.
They're all distracted to me.
Okay.
Yep.
Got one.
Enough.
You guys there?
I'm out. Shit.
2.
I dropped behind them. Flip
One
tower.
on drop. One on drop.
Got another.
They have a really light player. I don't know what you think. Jump here.
Ground jump.
Either thing, Ava.
Pushing up. Yep.
2 left. Drop. Make sure to drop.
Try right stack. Try right stack. Marked.
I'm out. I'm out. On the stack. On the stack. Try.
Behind tower. 1. Kirb.
Ah.
I see him. I'm dead to try. God damn it.
You stay on tower. You get the checkpoint. You die there.
I tried to get off.
You can't. You need to die on tower. Waiting for pick. We're stalling. I'm good to set.
Got one.
I'm curling.
Pick.
Got the zipcaster. Holy shit. Like mid zip.
3. Last is mid.
Ah. I got try. Traded.
This cooler effect. Watch the
On top of our stack.
He's out.
Watch
He
the
jumped out.
respawn.
Got one.
The pick.
Down.
There's
He
drop.
dropped. Street. Nice.
1 right tower.
I need help. They're still on me.
Yep. You just have Ava. That's
Ooh.
about it.
Jump. Right stack. Right stack.
Yep. I got him.
I need help here. I need help on tower.
Still right stack.
That one.
I'm out. Ava, your jump's not hitting. Your
Just
jump's
fight
not
left side on my ouch. Left side wall. Left tower. Reset our neutrals. Reset our neutrals. Ava, okay. Good
I
trade.
traded. Yeah.
Okay. It's meaningful now.
I'm out.
I'm set.
T-Tech left stack.
I'm out. Damn it.
Ava. Okay.
Yep.
That one. And from my bottom right.
Oh my
Okay.
fucking god! I traded
Double.
shot.
I'm out. Damn it.
Traded. Fuck. Did not trade that. I thought it would still have one. That's checkpoint. Okay. Third checkpoint's meaningful lead. Kirb, you might be a little bit dry up here.
I tapped him. He's low.
Actual lagging. I'm hitting him 4 times. Jump here. Okay, we want to win stack. We want to
I don't want to.
Okay.
win back to stack.
Throwing down on wave.
I got Zuka.
One next. Thank you.
3 out, call last.
Stamp. Left
Down
stack.
on it. Corner.
Also jump left stack.
Got him.
Got him.
2 out. One more jump. Watch it. One last. I have tower to me.
Watch right stack. Watch
Hold
right
the
stack.
special until last second.
Yep.
Like,
Oh my god.
They're still there.
Got him. I'm dead to bomb. Just kidding.
Ava, I'm gonna jump. Zipcaster now.
no, bad jump.
Okay, I zip.
Good luck.
Fuck. I'm
You
out.
have
I'm
it in
out.
the 2v2. You hit the good jump. I don't know what you're doing. Ava jump.
I'm dead.
Got one.
That one.
I'm out.
T-Tech
That
dead.
2. Wipe.
Cool.
Guy just respawned. The guys just respawned. Watch maybe for a jump.
Oh my god. They tries with me.
One at it. They're gonna have a Kaiser. Misses. 2 here. 2 here. Ooh. Got
Sword
one.
on my edge. Sword. They're zipping.
I'm out.
Got one.
You need to get on tower now.
Oh, okay, sorry. I should have killed the guy. That's on me. I thought I had to risk power because Kirb got out. If you had the bubble shield on tower, that would have been first game here.
Yeah. Next is Rainmaker on Manta.
Is it mechanical stuff, or are we just losing mechanical fights?
Maybe. I think I just
missing
need
shots?
to.
I feel like you're missing shots.
I was hitting shots that game.
Okay, never mind. Then I don't know.
Yeah, I went 17-10, so.
Did you say Rainmaker Manta?
Yeah.
Someone
No,
Rainmaker.
Kirb's fine. Ethan, how do you feel, man?
Not getting. I'm just trading too much, or I'm dying stupidly, which I died. I know,
That's what I'm
3 times
noticing.
to Zuka because they popped it like instantly.
I think you're also taking risky jumps.
Oh, yeah, that I noticed too. Your jumps are not ever.
We just gotta play more careful, I think. Don't overextend.
Manta, Rain, I'm Wave, I'll be Rainmaker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to go on first push left. Right.
You want platform?
Platform.
Oh, wait.
Right.
Manta.
Abel, where are you?
Oh shit. Yes, it's Manta. I'm switching back to S-Blast. Sorry. Ugh.
Right is easier to get to, but it's also the hardest. But it gives you very good high advantage, which I like. If you go on
I
ball.
have a feeling you don't know what you're talking about, but okay. Ava, flank.
Flank. Flank is the jump, right? Or wait,
Yeah.
no.
Flank is the call up for the jump.
Okay. That's flank. Cool.
Jump. Go. What is it? I mean, is that 0
That's
seconds?
zero.
I'm not in.
I will set
Everybody?
straight.
I'm here. I'm moving.
I'm not.
I have no idea what's happening.
My disconnect.
Yep.
A
Man.
communication error.
Yep. Reset room. Big F. Massive L.
Mm-hmm.
Big F.
Okay. With friends, make a room, set password, 8888.
Who was it? Was it me?
I have no idea.
888.
Yep.
What happened?
Disconnect? Probably me, with my internet fits hanging. Oh my god.
Next one is Rainmaker, Manta.
Wacky spells. Alright, who's missing?
One of theirs. Hmm. what's up with their last.
I feel like they were the one who had bad internet.
Oh, maybe.
Hello.
Go hard still.
What's our opening?
You're trying to get to their platform, right, Ava? Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Kirb, where you at?
Probably up on
Our
grades.
recommendation is
Oh.
attack their bunker.
Going
From,
there.
like, go our bunker, go right side of the grates up there, and then attack their bunker.
Okay.
Ethan, you should be going up to their bunker at the same time as you see our charger crossing that. If they're shooting from him in the floor, you kill them on the floor.
I'm flanking their
Unlikely
bunker.
because you kill them. No, you're flanking their platform.
Their platform.
agree.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Main target's the blaster, but I think the assault can kill you. Oh, okay. Yeah, go up. Full bunker. One down.
I dropped by accident. God damn it.
Fucking
Bang.
Ah, I ran out of thing.
Bang. Big clap.
Oh! We got Rainmaker. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, in the air. No. Street. Trying to dodge street.
Ah, fuck
Rotating
it.
left. I got one.
It's on me. I'm out. On my out. Deep shot.
Oh my god. What the
Street
fuck?
still.
I'm behind.
Street still. Useless. Street they make it up. No. One still here. One still underneath. Two underneath. Shield.
Got one.
Last.
One on me, one on me.
Moving
They're
him.
leaving, they're leaving.
Okay. Pop it. Ethan, take.
Reset, reset.
No.
2 people
That's
sharking below.
Fine, I'll grab it.
Hard lock. Ava, you good?
Poking their bunker.
They're weak. Oh, okay. Good.
Off street. Cooler.
Going.
Thank
I'm
you.
in bunker.
I'm
Did
gonna top left.
pop try.
Ah, I died.
Got the one guy.
Come on.
One more on my out. And they're street.
I got it.
Behind. Okay, you
Oh,
guys
I'm
can't
dead.
stay in bunker. All 4 of you can't. One person's in bunker, one person's guarding him, the person guarding him is front line. Both of you need to be attacking street, you gotta get out of there.
Okay.
You all get unslated, we all get bombed, we all lose.
They're going left.
Yep. I'm watching our street.
Still one. Still one there. They're weak.
Watch street.
They're dead. Watch.
Coming from street.
Watching straight.
Cool, then go through street. Ava, through street.
I know. I'm watching. Got one.
There's one on our bunker. Behind. By our cooler.
Oh!
One more on the floor.
I'm dead.
Where? I'm out. They're on me, they're on me. They're up top, they're up top.
I'm fighting their bunker.
They're on me. Oh my
Got
god.
him.
I'm dead. God. Fuck. Okay.
We're resetting.
Can I clean jump?
No! We're resetting. On defense, you should just... Okay, you should be dead.
I should be.
You should.
True.
Doors up.
Being sneaky.
He's gone left, around me with left.
I'm dead.
I'm down wave on top. One on top, one on top. On my out, on my out.
Got him.
Shot. Thank you.
Last
Kirb,
one,
jump
last
in.
time wall. Last is dead, he out. He dies.
I'm set straight.
Going up bunker.
I'm set up there left.
Got one.
Go street, go street.
Where?
Go street all the way up, you're all the way up 13, it's patching further up. Go flank, Ethan. Go, you're popping. You take, Ethan.
Yeah.
Go, that's
One on top, one on top, one on top, one on left, one on left.
I'm
Keep
behind.
going, Ethan, you got
On me, one on me.
Where? Drop it.
Behind.
Lead. Thank you. Keep running, keep running.
Oh.
Damn it.
Yes.
Go
Yes.
for it.
Our
Good lead,
goat.
that's perfect.
Our goat. The
Come
goat.
I know. Coming in.
Roll left
Bouncing one.
twice. Roll left
I'm
twice
dead.
to me, Ethan.
I'm on you, Dino.
Insane
You
pushing.
fucked up. Okay. Did not
I'm
go.
making out with you
sorry,
right now.
sorry.
I got one. Oh,
Ethan gets a triple if he comes to my location. This sucks. Ethan gets a triple if he comes to my. It sucks. Ah. Oh, that was so fucked. Why are you guys like that?
I'm making a very questionable jump.
Got him.
But it was worth it. Oh,
No, hide. No, hide.
oh, never mind. I'm dead.
One on my up still. Get up on our plat. Yeah.
I don't think they have a push part. We have to shoot. Got him. Both dead. One behind, two behind. Cooler, I'm walking in.
I'm rotating snipe. Where are they?
On me.
Oh, damn it. Last one mid, last one mid.
Oh, I'm dead.
Clean, he killed himself for it. Oh my god, what a gamer.
Damn.
Cooler, I don't give a fuck.
Let's go.
That was such a clean play. I thought it was good.
I'm out. They got
I
popped.
want to kick
Just
it
be
out.
careful. No, I want a clean jump. I want a clean jump.
Lock. Clean.
Rainmaker's low.
Bad.
Coming in.
Got shot.
Yeah, monkey. Okay, that's the correct play. The play from bunker.
Got one.
Special.
Nah.
Got two.
Fucking
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got
Yes,
him.
the correct play for them is they go from bunker and build their special. However, they didn't actually get bunker. Like they need to cover street first, which so that's the Rainmaker setup. Ethan, when you're like down on that like the other street like, to get in there, the tunnel,
Yeah.
you either go down completely or you don't. You made a pretty good call to get us one. I don't know what that call was. I'll be honest.
You guys were just.
All I know is I did.
I just knew that I could make it there because there's enough paint.
I mean, because I threw the paint for you.
Yeah.
I think I fucked up. I should have threw a bomb on the wall.
What
but
next?
I wanted to kill it at the end.
Game 3 is zones on Haggle.
Ooh, I like that.
Everyone loves Haggle.
I am a Haggle fan personally.
Not Undertow. Yep. Okay. Zones Haggle.
Man,
Whoop. Zones Haggle. We know this one.
we got it.
Oh, this is our fucking map. Do you want beak or
Main.
Main.
I don't care.
Alright.
All I know is main. All I know is main.
Just play main. It works. It's good.
VDS it is.
I don't know about beacons on the stage because by the time it resets and what is it, zones?
Yeah.
Actually, no, they might be throwing. But your beacon has to be on like wacky spots. And I don't know if you know those wacky spots.
You mean like
Dude, you do. You play beacons for yourself. They're not for me. I don't need to play for them.
Cool opinion. I want bombs. I want bombs.
Real? I also want bombs.
Cool opinion, nuke the enemy.
Real?
Do we want to do that split push or do we want to just blitz it?
We're always. That's the main.
We're doing main. We're doing
Out
main.
here talking about main, and we talked about main. The point
I'm
of
not
calling
here.
it main is because we know what main is. If you have to ask what main is, then you don't know what main is. I don't know where you were for the whole conversation of main.
Oh wait, Ethan was high as fuck when we discussed main.
True, but also Ethan
I remember.
should have known. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't know. It is the split.
What is main?
I know the
Make sure you
split. I know the split.
You weren't there, Kirb.
And
That's
Kirb
on
also
you as well.
wasn't there. Okay.
Exactly.
Kirb, you play
Kirb,
mid
just play
line.
like you do, play in the
I'm
middle.
going on the right. Ava's going on going on the left.
No, we're doing the main. There's a difference.
That
Watch
is
the
the
Hydra, that's the
main.
main play. Watch the bomb. Watch
Oh,
the
shit.
yeah, play the game.
They got Hydra and Tetris now.
Look up call. We will get out Christian from the middle here to push.
Marked one.
They're
Looking
wrong.
right. He's looking right street.
One on me. Damn it. I'm out.
You have the paint curve?
I'm backing up. I'm backing up, going through mid.
Is he timed? Yeah, heavy's on time.
Actually.
Okay.
That's a Hydra. I'm
Go
dead
for
to
it.
try.
And now I'm dead. Fuck. Okay.
Hydra's dead.
You help in zone, just main zone, pushing from left side, main zone.
Damn it. How did I...
Fuck! He didn't even see me, god damn it!
It's okay. It's okay.
Ah, okay, this sucks. What do we want now?
I'm dead.
Cover stage.
Yep.
Looks like we have a neutral. Okay, they're playing from underneath to left side. Heavy's on left side. I'm looking for.
I can't move. I can't move in.
Put the cooler. Put the thingy down on the floor so that there's this room. Ava goes left side with that.
I'm set.
And we kill him out
Yeah,
from
I'm
right
gonna
to
do it
left.
now.
That's what the thing is. Yep.
I'm set left. I have zip. I'm gonna click zip. I'm gonna click zip because it's.
One on me out.
Fuck.
I'm dead.
Okay.
I'm out.
Oh,
System
fuck
TV
me,
will
I'm
turn
out.
off. Rush left immediate all team.
Yep.
Yep. Well, I got one on stairs.
Got one.
I did it.
Holy shit!
I did it.
Oh my god!
I did my job.
Nice.
That's
I cannot believe I hit that snipe.
Oh my. Okay.
Lock him. Let's try not to get locked
I
down.
need to
Oh,
jump.
heavy
Never
is
mind.
Got two. I'm still alive somehow. Push up, push up.
I'm at staircase.
Got it. Keep pushing it.
Got one.
Hard left. Top.
I'm dead.
I'm out.
Setting. Good jumps to me. Good jumps to me.
I backed up.
Good.
One up hit.
One going right street. One going right street. Watch it, Dino.
I'm dead.
I did my job. Heavy good. Yeah, we have time to beat. I don't have to rush out time, so I'll call it. I'm gonna get the missiles. We're gonna do that. Yeah, we're gonna missiles on the left. I have the missiles. We're good. Hey, we're gonna wait for Ava for a second. Make sure our staircase is good.
Staircase is not good. It's good. Wait. Tetras. Tetras are low. They're chipped.
Throw down away. Throw down right.
They drop. Okay, cool.
Tetras back up. Back mid on left street. Get him, Ava.
I got one.
Nice.
I died.
Heavy killed me. Yeah. This time. Ethan, this is okay. It's fine. Turn back mid. Ethan, you're last. You're resetting. We do the same thing. I don't have this this time though.
I
What are
killed
we working
Tetras.
with? We're up players. We're working up players.
We have.
I am
The
just
in
sharp.
zone-
We have to get it.
I have the arms.
I got one. I got two.
Throw down away.
Okay.
Nice.
Got one.
Watch Hydra.
Oh damn it! That Hydra got me. They got.
I got.
They're marked.
You jump. I see nothing.
They have booyah.
Blue's up now. Blue's in a bad position to be pushing down.
Hydra is super out.
One right street. Tetras. I'm out. Tetras, right street. Resliding.
We're super dead.
Dino, just next to you, Dino.
Lot of
I
dead
know.
people. Okay.
I dived the person that I need to dive. Heavy's in mid. I should have dived the heavy. You're right. Not something I could do.
Got one.
We're doing a thing called cleaning stairs. What do we have to get it? We have to.
Stairs clean.
Move up.
Yeah, we're up.
I have bubble.
I have zip. Cool. Let's use them.
Dino, jump in.
I got one.
100. Got him.
Hydra on 10.
Got one.
Yep, on me out. One more right side. Watch it. Watch the destiny zone.
Got him.
Man, Hydra booyah bomb.
Yep.
Mark 2.
Jump.
Try dropped.
Okay, take it down.
Good.
We are
We are here.
we are
We're gonna build a
okay.
special. We're gonna have something.
Watch out for
Heavy's
try.
Bottom right side.
I'm out. Tetris on me.
Got one.
I'm gonna play main real quick. Just a chick queaky,
Hydra's on the hard right.
cheeky.
Got it.
main. Okay.
I'm dead to booyah. It is last. Okay.
Got one.
Please. Paint on paper.
I am.
Okay.
Head back. Ugh.
Yeah, watch her go.
Jump away. I'm out.
Our stairs.
Got one. No, it's over.
No, okay, that's on me. I threw it for the first time in a while. Again.
Okay, yeah, once the slider got popped, it was over. I didn't see him go through left street.
I made mistakes.
That's okay.
Ethan,
Good
big
games.
thing, you really need to anchor our jumps back in our base. That was like, we all died because of those jumps. Like,
Yeah.
I died specifically because of the jumps. It sucked.
Sorry.
No, You want to be there, you can't be there. You have to lock the jumps. You want to lock the jumps.
I should have called it more. I only said it twice. Because I said head back for jumps.
Oh, that's fair. Oh, that was a fair game. Good experience.
Okay, we're 22 out of 40, so we're bottom 50% right now.
Do we have one more game or not?
We have one more round, yeah.
Okay, let's go up. How are you guys feeling?
I'm feeling good. This is really good.
That round felt good, but I'm sad that we lost.
I don't know.
I'm
play more
losing
control.
focus.
We're good. Take a moment now and reset them.
Yeah, take a mental reset.
Generally, we're doing good.
This happens a lot in Smash where people get like burnt out if they're playing for too long. Just take a second, get up, like take a walk if you can. Just take a mental reset. Like get your hands off the controller, away from the screen, and just like, you know, get back into it. Because burnout is the killer. It is a killer. You will start playing like a C rank. I'm not even kidding.
Good plan. Okay, I'm gonna mute.
Yep. I'm also gonna get up. I'll be a minute.
I'm gonna use the bathroom again.
Bro, man, had to use bathroom like 3 times during the movie. What the?
I'm staying hydrated.
Bro, peeing does not mean staying hydrated. It means you're peeing. If you have a bladder issue, you can see your doctor. You guys have to come back because the game's open, and I can't stall forever.
Alright, I'm back.
Room's open. Can you swap your pool right now, Ethan?
Sure.
Swap it to the low ink C.
Yeah, give me a sec, give me a sec, give me a sec.
Take your time.
Next
All
match
low
is
cares.
ready.
No space. Yep. Ethan's making the pool, you can stay in LA.
Oh, delicious.
Well, what's it called? Low ink? All lowercase?
Low ink
Low
C.
ink C.
Alright, joined it.
And then password is 8335.
I need an invite first. And Mimi? Are they meat?
Baby. Yeah, I got that sweet tooth, baby.
FG.
All right, I'm back.
Ethan,
you have it?
Neither of these two are fucking them.
Saphis?
Yeah, they're not Saphis. Neither of these. I see Crude. Mid X.
Are we in the correct pool now?
Yeah, I'm in their pool.
F-I-G, Saphis.
Yeah, that shit's not there.
Hey, refresh.
I am. That shit's just not there.
You type it in right?
Yeah, pools. Low ink C.
Oh my god.
I'm being serious. There's
Hence the voice.
Repsy and
Just join through Dino.
Ava, I hope you're doing it.
I'm looking.
At this point, like, I don't know why I trusted Ethan.
Huh.
I'm sorry that they don't have the right fucking name.
Well,
This shit's not. What do you mean? I'm looking for them
Man is not finding it.
because they didn't fucking send it.
Alright, who else is searching for it? I know Ethan's on the case.
I'm looking for it right now. I'm not seeing him.
Is it low ink C?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want me to share my screen? I can literally
No,
open the
I
code.
believe you. You don't see it, then I'm confused. Someone should type at them, and it should not be me.
I don't see him either.
Wacky, yeah. Okay.
There it is.
There they are. What's past?
8335.
8, easy 5, yeah.
Which
Crazy,
you guys found him?
Yeah.
Found them. Jesus Christ.
Kirb's
bro.
in it.
What the fuck, Kirb?
I was already here.
Kirb literally sniped it.
8835.
8335.
8, 3.
Huh?
8335.
Kirb, what's the? Oh wait, we don't have to care. Never mind.
No, yeah. I mean, it's good to know. It's clams on crab leg, tower on inkblot, rainmaker on robo ramen.
What was it? What are the modes? Clam Blitz, what?
Clams, crab leg, tower, inkblot, rainmaker robo ramen.
I just needed modes. I'm hearing Clams, Tower, Rainmaker?
Yep.
Yeah, clams, tower, rainmaker.
Alright, cool.
Nah, they did not fucking send it, man. They're liars.
I don't know. I don't know. You're ill. You're ill. You're first down. Down first. First down. First down.
1 fish, 2 fish, 3
Climb
fish.
blocks.
Yeah. Crap.
Who invented climb blocks? Why are they gonna die?
Guys, I thought clams was supposed to be one of our good modes.
Have we
Well,
won a
see,
single
here's the thing.
clam game yet?
We didn't
Yeah.
start clams yet.
Yeah,
We never
I know.
We
played
did most
I
of
know.
these modes.
I know.
Being
It's
shy.
it's good that we're consciously choosing to focus clams because it's an area where
If we can fix that, we'll
Need
fix everything else. It's fine. What's our main play? It's just dive cone, right?
Yeah.
I was.
Do you want me to go fire hose?
Alright.
I'm right side.
Kirb, you're purposely stalling backwards because we will die. Ava, you go right. Yeah, right. You go right of the wall.
Okay.
You're really looking for a burst bomb.
Watch out, bomb behind you.
I don't know why Ethan's not with me. Ethan, why are you? Where are you? Where the f
Because
are
I'm
you?
trying to.
You go from mid to the left side of the wall. Oh my god.
He's low, he's low, he's low.
You're useless. You're absolutely
He popped back. That's my bad. I tapped him. I'm dead. I'm out. One in mid. Behind you,
Working it
Ethan.
up to their grades to be annoying.
Alright. I'm locking your base.
Cool. I'm backing up. Going for a shark.
2 right side.
On you, Dino.
Fucked
There are
up.
3 on you, Ava.
Yep.
You're just gonna have to pick out here. Got one. Play their cone. They're in cone. Cool. Got one. One above me.
Well, I died.
BP dropped. BP dropped.
Behind me.
He jumped out.
F7.
Just through here. Push it. Go. We want to get there first before you care about the power. Like, get there first, get power second. We want to rock it and then get.
I died.
Okay.
Where are they?
We're
With
gonna
cooler,
reset.
though.
We're resetting because we're at half and we don't have anything. So play mid, build the power. Defense. You can get it.
Yeah, I'm trying to. What's going on here?
We're cone. We're playing that cone again.
I'm out. BP on grates and mid.
Billy's weak. Billy's down.
Mid grates. Mid.
Got him. What the?
We have our cone. I'm ensuring it. Who has power? Isn't
I'm out. Fuck.
Oh, you. Okay.
Sorry.
Why are you fighting that?
I'm being
not
silly.
playing clams, and the only clams are on them.
They pop jet. Be careful.
Well, they think they're playing around.
I got one.
No, two out.
I'm dead.
One last. One is marked. One with them.
That one.
Dead.
I need to
Push up.
I got seven.
You have them.
Got one.
Just put all in. We're not. You want at it? Two top right there.
Got one.
Reset it. It's dead. At half
Yep.
time, we're not getting any more times in. Reset it. Play mid. You can
down.
turn them.
I can build up for wave.
I have 6 plans
We'll
already.
put it in like the cone when you get a chance. And let us know when you have it.
One on
and
top
we can
grades.
play with
I
it.
have it.
Shit.
We got played.
I'm driven now.
Yep, we got played. We're 3 out. Ava, you have to trade someone. Pick.
Okay. I'm charging.
We're gonna stop here.
Cool. Hey, there's trade. Yes.
Got one. Missed the jump.
Other gal.
Top left still.
Cool.
Three out.
Got him.
Great.
Nice.
We have it. Fire down.
Got one.
Cool, we're up. We're 2 up. Play the cone. You can get up.
I'm down.
I have bubble.
On top grade. Behind you, Ava. Behind you.
Oops. I traded. Yep.
High power.
Sorry.
Have the cooler left side cone. Let's play it here.
It's all
Mid,
good.
one great.
Thanks for calling me.
One great. We go on with the cooler. What are we doing?
I couldn't go in.
Zap down.
Got one.
Go up.
BP weak.
Get that jump.
Gal dead. BP jumped out.
Wipe. Push up.
Awesome.
I have 7.
Cool.
I have power.
Two.
Ava, you don't pick up clamps.
Okay.
Because that's why we don't have a power.
I'm zipping.
Just run across. Go.
All right.
I got their gal.
Got bubble up.
Ah, fuck. I died. But it's okay. Delicious.
What the fuck? I'm dead.
Got it. I did my job. I reset the cooler. Cool.
You're so base, Dino. Thank you.
It can't be me. It can't be me. I swear to God. Oh, Jesus. Oh, take the wheel. Oh, okay, we're good. There's that cone. We have a play. Looks like we're trying to take out left side. Abel, you want to push that guy on the left? We can get in.
Okay, yeah, I'm set left. Cool. We're going.
Zap on me.
I got one.
Zap on me. He's low. Dead.
got
Traded.
Cool. Keep pushing. Go all the way in the base. They have nothing. That guy can't get to you.
Jumping in.
That guy can't get to you. That guy can't get to you.
Ah, I died.
You get cooler.
Nice.
Delicious.
Okay, alright, I didn't have plans. I would have ended the game there.
Ah, shit. I'm gonna die here.
Probably.
Comical amounts of
We're
nutritional
gonna
value.
have 3 powers and we can win the game from this. This is not it.
Okay.
We're locking out. Build special.
I'm burning clams.
You wanna, yeah. Okay, that's not like the high priority. If burning times, if we're up like that much tempo, we're not.
Got one.
If you burn 1 pile and
Watch left. Watch left.
Yeah, BP's on left.
I'm out.
Nice.
They took their time.
Suck my nuts.
I'm so smart, you can suck my nuts.
Exactly.
I'm so fresh, you can suck my nuts.
Wait, I can't say that because we're on a VOD. Sorry, big man.
Wait, Ava, When you had the power climb, there was a block that you can also use to jump up there. You didn't need to go to ramp. Ramp is probably why you were slightly slower.
Oh.
If you take the quicker route, you get there quicker. I'm just saying.
There's a
why
block
we
jump
wanna-
there?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why we
It's a
play
block
around
jump.
it. That's why we're going straight left, because the guy was so off position being at fire hose that we could walk around him.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Now
I
you're
haven't,
chilling. He didn't know.
I haven't played this map mode a lot.
No, we didn't even talk about the map. It's fine.
Dino, for being off position in the beginning, I fucked up the block jump. I'm sorry. I wasn't
That's
high
funny.
enough.
You don't even
And
go to the block. You just go to the middle, but you go left side of the wall from middle, and then you curl and you win like a triple. There was a quad there.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I know the plan. It's just I fucked up.
This guy's not. This is not it. Tower
Oh, hey.
control.
Okay, also in the future, I'm way better opening left side than right side.
No.
Yeah.
You open right side because it's fun. Doesn't matter
Okay.
that you're better. You open every other situation but the beginning of the game.
Alright, this is-
Oh.
Cone is cone.
This is Inkblot Tower. What do we want?
Staying on BD.
I
This is the
think
most
I'm
power
gonna keep playing
stage there
sword.
is. Cool.
I kind of want to
Same
go.
goal. We can get first checkpoint by having left stack. Left stack is so significantly more important
Okay,
on offense.
That's
On
what I was
defense, we
thinking.
want right stack.
Okay.
I think we should just play for left stack.
Okay, cool. I will
Ava,
just.
you go for slick.
I go for slick. Cool. I can do that. Sweet.
I'm with you. Ethan, you stay middle.
Okay.
Make sure that nobody
Alright.
comes in from like curb side.
All right.
You're building structure there. Make sure you shoot at the front as well. And if anyone comes from like middle or right stack, you play those guys. If there's more numbers, like if it's a 1v1, you can take it. If it's like 2v1, good for us. Then we win the game. Also, you should bring power to Kirb. Kirb should stay on the top. Like,
Yep.
If we just end up later.
Top
And
of
then
tree.
you can swap with Kirb. Okay, like
On
that.
first checkpoint or third?
First and second. Don't know what you're
Okay.
talking about.
Right.
Bring power to Kirb. Kirb will take it. Kirb, you swap.
I'm for slick. I
I
love
see
slick. Set.
One drop mid,
Let's go for it. Come.
two drop mid, one's on right stack,
Nice.
Climb.
Nice.
Climb.
Cool.
Climb.
Still marked.
one behind. One's in our base.
Got it clean.
Nice one, Ava.
Cool.
Jumping to
Got
you.
it clean.
Nice.
Ava, cross.
Where's Zap?
Where do you need it, Ava? Oh, I have no idea.
I'm on tower.
Got it.
I
Looking at Ava.
Ooh.
Two in attic. Two in attic. One on you, Ethan. You see him?
Zipping cause I'm
Ethan,
a
leave the guys. Go
gamer.
front. Go front. Climb up the. Yep.
One on me. One on me.
Play it.
I need help.
Okay. Ethan, you needed to play to our teammate, not where you were. I know you're trying to zone a guy, but that guy is so off position. You chasing him makes you off position.
Yeah, Ethan. I needed you on tower there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's alright. It's alright. It's learning experience. It's alright.
We're playing left stack, not tower. That's risky shit.
There was a guy on left tower. That's my
It is
bad.
risky
Yeah,
shit.
that's why you took tower and not the tower.
Yeah,
Left
that's
stack.
I got one.
nice one, Ava. I don't know how you lived that.
Twice then. Ava,
I'm
you
dead.
got it? Move.
There's one over there. Watch that torp. Blaster, there's two on you, Ethan. Right stack. Oh, Jesus. Jet's in the air.
I'm set left stack.
Send it. Go.
I'm taking rail up. Be a problem. Cool.
Got one on me, left stack.
I'm dead. Yep.
Dead.
Damn. Okay.
Kirb, save this ass.
I'm on tower. Kirby, you can jump.
Yep. I'm right here.
Come on, you're going down way.
Yep. Trade out.
Did my job. One.
Got one.
Left. Watch it. 19. Clean up out. I don't know.
Yep.
Got two.
Where? I got him.
Bottom right, catch you. Clean
He's
up.
low. He's low.
Ava, you go at it, please.
Go attic.
Oh shit. Ugh.
Oh hey. Behind us I think.
One dropping attic.
I'm out.
One on me. One on me on tower. He's sharking. Tetris on me.
Oh my god.
Plus on my ass. Yeah.
I'm
You
so
reset,
fucking
you
out
have
of
a
being.
checkpoint, you can breathe. Everybody like breathe. If you're playing, we're resetting. Everybody reset. We good?
Oh.
Yep.
okay.
We're good.
Okay.
Right
Oh, I died.
So play for right stack, Ethan.
Right stack.
It should be on right stack. And we're playing it so that they can't get talent. Because they're coming in from the
I died.
See how they're already there? If we set earlier, they don't do shit like that.
Got one.
Sorry.
Slick.
I'm out. Right Tetris. Tetris right stack.
Got one.
They're dead. There's one skirmishing on right stack.
I flipped tower because I'm silly.
Jet in the air, jet in the air.
Jet's reset. Jet's jump is on.
I got one.
I have a bomb on it. I don't have a bomb on it. Okay, Jet's dead.
Yes, it's dead.
Cool. Now we're on our
Watch auto bomb.
Placing stacks so that we don't lose. Let's back.
Yep. Oh, one in our base, one in our base.
I am Sharky.
Tetra's behind, Tetra's behind. Got him.
I'm out. On my out.
Hey guys,
It's up, it's
I'm gonna curl their flat.
They got cooler.
Cool. Have fun.
He's a big.
I'm on tower.
You got one pick. Oh.
One in attic. You got him, Dino?
Mark.
Got one?
Hey.
Mark, you need help on Mark. Mark
Come
is
on.
central.
Nice.
Chilling in attic.
Sorry, I got one.
Tetras are low, Tetras are low.
They're on block, they're on block.
Got him?
Nice, you got him.
I'm being bombed out. That guy's dead. Nice. Watch out, bomb. Bomb on tower. Watch out, Ethan. Nice. Nice.
Beat it.
Got one. That's game.
Nice.
GG's.
Ethan, why are you on tower?
Oh, because I
You should be up slick. No, you should be
Up
up slick. You being on
Oh.
tower, they get a sniper that kills both of you. Did not matter if you were on tower or not. You are on
Oh.
slick, he either kills you or tower. We always win. You need to be up slick. That is the
Okay.
only thing I can say that you did wrong, because I did not watch anything else. But I have no idea why you're on tower. I'm on the floor because I'm watching people who drop on the right. They had a lot of people dropping there. Twice. I killed them both. I
Yeah,
stay
that's
there
my
because
bad.
in case they keep coming. Abo.
Sorry.
Also, if you told me you needed help to get up there, then I could put the ink sharks to help you get up there. But at that point, it's mute because we won.
Alright, final round. Rainmaker on Robo Ramen.
What are these guys seated again? So I have reference.
Seated 26, I believe?
Oh, well, this is whack.
Yes.
I can just see them wrong.
Good 6.
It's kind of a high seed for how we've been rolling them.
I mean, it's low. Seeds can only go so far for a bunch.
No, the seeds
like,
are 100%
baby
accurate all the
teams.
time.
That's so true. That's so true, actually.
You know what?
There's
You're
no
right.
point in having a round robin. They should just send it day 2 immediately. They just know everyone's cool.
That's real.
They should just instantly disqualify everyone in the top half of seeds after seeding. I mean in the bottom half.
Ah, shit. I just realized.
If your team just has a cool name, you just get disqualified. That's funny.
Quick question. I realized I've never actually played Robo Ramen on Rainmaker.
Do the exact same things you've been doing on Robo Ramen, and it'll probably work out. Don't stress.
Okay.
Oh! Hey, wait, it's Robo Ramen. I should play the weapon that I'm good at on Robo Ramen.
Yeah. Have some fun
Yeah. Yeah.
It's our last game of the day. Let's make it count.
Oh, that's the game where I run Ealier and run it down?
Oh, come on.
Don't you dare.
Like, you can't, like, can we win so it can be a high elo so we're not like Epsilon?
No,
Real?
we
Real?
wanna be
Dude, if we get Epsilon, we're fucked.
That's how we win games.
Yeah, but
Winner of Epsilon means jack shit,
Literally
dude.
doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter.
Call sets. We wasted some time not calling sets instead of like arguing.
I'm opening stairs.
Is it a glass? I'll take glass that normal route.
I can go glass then with Ethan.
I'm taking that route.
You can actually do it, or you're just messing with me? Because if you do it, we win games.
Let's do it. Let's do
We
it.
will win this game. We will win.
And then I'm on.
I believe.
We're the technological huskies.
On God.
Can I get a whoop?
No.
Nuh-uh.
Alright.
Oh,
Do right.
I'm
set.
Me. I died.
I got one.
Grades one on grades
I
one
got
on
two.
grades.
It's 2 on 2, 2 on 2.
Oh!
The last, and Perry's is last, and Perry's is last. They're all respawns, Pop. Grab that, Ethan. Painting up for you. Got you.
Got it.
Nice. Okay, let's get another pop. Shit! Where did that come from?
The
I
fucking.
played from behind. Ava didn't realize that.
That's so funny.
Oh my god. I'm coming out of ink. Okay.
It's okay, we win these.
Got
Holy
it.
shit, Dino, let's go.
You guys were resetting. I don't think you're supposed to.
Okay, watch out, Ava.
Okay.
I can return bomb. Or insect. They're at mid. What are we playing for? I'm looking for words.
I'm shark.
I'm looking for a pick. I can't get one.
I'm sharking mid. I'm waiting for them to walk forward.
He's bottom right. That looks like
I got one. I'm walking around.
Ethan got double. Last respawn, they're I don't know who
Yeah, I got it.
I fucking died.
Clean.
Wait, any fucking bomb. Bring the bomb, bitch butt.
Ready to go?
Oh my
I love butt.
Dude, chill out. Come on. Play right.
We're gonna hit bomb.
Ava's curling.
I'm curling
Wasted
these
bubble.
fools. Yep.
Make sure you don't see Ava. Let's see if Ava gets a double and we're going again.
Oh shit, I'm dead. Just kidding. I'm alive.
There's one.
1 minute.
Hey. Oh fuck! I didn't get the double. Okay.
Good try.
Nice.
One more dice, Kirb. One more on Ethan. Careful, Ethan.
I'm holding mid.
This jump is gonna be funny.
Can you trail maybe?
Oh, ew, because whale just sucks. I hate
Reset.
whale.
Run defense medium.
Got one.
Okay.
It's better.
Going up again.
They don't have to give
Be careful.
And Perry's my side. He's on me. And Perry's on my this way.
They're weak. Right, lead. Yeah, nice.
Nice. And Perry's dead. Where's Gal? He's right there. He's right there.
Okay.
Make him feel uncomfortable.
Got him. He's dead.
Yo! Ah! Hey guys, you ever heard of Booyah? Booyah.
Booyah.
Run with it. Pick it up and run it. We're gonna play like that.
I'm out.
I fucked up.
We all threw a bomb.
Ethan, reset, okay.
Gotta wipe out. They were all like,
Yeah.
the shield was close enough where we couldn't throw them all. Blocker thing, they're gonna be there. 2 already there. They're smartly playing in front of it, they're not. Oh, there you get my shield. 1,
I'm dead.
2 shield.
Got one.
1 out.
Nice.
Yeah, right. Take it back.
Delicious.
Take it back. Pop. All bomb. All someone goes bomb. Anything good? Go.
Yep. Pain.
Table. Yup.
I'm gonna curl.
Got bubble.
Curling.
Got one.
Cool.
Two up on the pillow. Got one.
Now this is our pick. This is where we can get a play. We got an instant bomb.
Jump the bubble. Jump the
Gaming.
bubble.
I fixed.
Kirb.
Oh, I almost made it.
Grabbing.
Get
Okay.
it.
This is okay though.
Yep, if 5 leads, great. We have enough.
Jump.
Got you.
Time to reach.
Oh.
The special. This is gonna be really early, I know. They might even be in.
Don't move out of that corner until I'm there, because then you draw attention to my jump.
Me?
Yeah, if we go for that play, don't move.
Okay.
Because as soon as you make your presence known, they're gonna look at where you were,
2 in the bottom.
and then they're gonna see my jump.
1 in the glass. We can take out the guy glass. Just push up the first checkpoint. Go.
Yep.
You might be stalling, but they don't actually have anything.
Fuck, I'm dead.
Shit.
That was a fair 1v1, was it not? That's all I'm saying.
Got the bomb.
It
Got
was.
1, 2 out, last one.
Got him.
Jump, you. I know you're clean.
Yep.
I got it.
Top left, go right side. Right.
Gal's dead.
Sorry.
Nice.
That guy's last. And Perry's last.
Behind you. Yeah, Donna, you got it. I'm jumping to you.
I'm just painted.
I have no paint.
I'm waiting for these fools.
Sorry, he got the special.
I'm dead.
5. Hold it. 4. Hold it. Just hold it. 2.
Damn it.
Okay, from that time, I have half the special. I will get it.
I'm also half the special. I probably won't get it.
I'm half.
Don't get it. Because if you get it, I won't have time to go 9.
I'm rotating stairs. This was.
We can never
Gal's pushing up. He's on me.
Oh!
Where?
I fucked up my dive. Okay.
Good.
He's last. He's last.
Far back. They can't do shit. We win.
Skipper jump.
Nice.
Good
Dude,
job.
I got a fucking double at the end.
Yep.
Oh my god. I shouldn't feel good because they're
Did we
26.
know these guys?
Yeah, we did.
Starting strong, ending strong. Let's go.
Overall splatter. I support that shit.
Rock me.
We take those.
We take those. Where's my fucking fist bump?
I I got a silver. Sorry, Ethan.
3 gold.
I was double silver or double gold, 1 silver. Fortunately.
3 gold.
Good stuff.
Dubskis.
Clap, 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 clap.
Hey guys,
okay.
we did it. First
Did it.
tournament.
It's not
Well,
over.
we still play tomorrow.
We got tomorrow.
Well, there's no guarantee that we make it to day 2. I just looked in help desk.
Yeah. So I think for sets we went 3-3.
Yes, that sounds right. For games,
That's actually not bad.
I think game record is more important here.
We'll see.
Climb Blitz needs improving. Rainmaker, it's wacky. No comment.
Huh.
Zones, I think, is where our strongest was now.
Yeah.
I have a
That's good.
question. Do we want to switch off for Rainmaker plays, or am I good?
You're chill. I don't think we have anyone to switch off to. If anything, I think I'd switch out Kirb more, because Kirb is good for him.
Ethan, as far as I'm concerned, you were making some fucking insane Rainmaker runs.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You carry Rainmaker's also good.
Oh wait, I'm mistaken. Delta is the really bad bracket. It's Gamma. Gamma's 3rd and Epsilon is 4th.
Yeah, whatever. Let's get in the really bad
ED,
bracket.
yeah.
Yes! Yes!
What are we at?
I love bad
Wait.
bracket.
They already calculated us?
No. I'm just looking at the day 2 format. It says top 8 teams will play in a round robin. So top 8 will either go to alpha or beta, decided by a round robin. And then from day 1 placements, 4 teams from each Swiss group will be seeded into gamma and epsilon brackets. So, what is it? What are our standings?
How can you find that?
Checking. I'm looking right now. We are 20th, so probably not gonna go to day 2.
Yeah, oh well.
Oh.
That's how it goes.
We shall see. We shall see.
We learned.
We did learn, and that was fun as hell.
Ooh, that was fun.
Yeah. I
I'm
had a
catching
good
up on
time.
all the messages because I was on mute this entire tournament and I have like 40 pings.
Yeah, so that Cherry Bomb team, they got 3rd overall.
Very nice.
Oh, so you're saying we should just beat them down?
Real.
Did we even take a game off them?
I think we did.
No. We did?
Alright, cool.
Did we get 3-0'd? I think. Wait, hold on.
I thought we got...
Oh, we took a
Yeah,
game.
no, we
I
got
feel like
3-0'd. We got 3-0'd by Cherry Bomb. It's unfortunate.
No, damn, okay.
Okay, guys. Oh, I'm kind of tired. I need to stop looking at a screen. I need to like go touch grass.
I gotta do homework.
Snow. Okay.
Go make a snow angel.
Real.
Go
Yeah.
enjoy the coldness.
Cool. My stream VOD will be up if we want to review like games plus comms.
Yep, I'm gonna upload mine as well,
Everything.
just in case, so we can get multiple POV.
Cool. Okay. Wah wah.
Yep.
Bye bye guys.
Everyone say bye, chat.
Bye-bye.
Bye, chat.
Bye, chat.
Bye, chat.
Bye chat. Bye chat.